I was sitting in the waddy while the other two vehicles drove around looking for Bergdahl. And then all of a sudden, boom, an RPG just smacked in the side of the vehicle behind me. Boom, out the cornfield. The gunner of that vehicle, Gus, just dropped. I thought he was dead, but he rose back up to that turret. He just started lobbing Mark 19 grenades into the cornfield. So we jump out of the vehicle. One of those RPGs, it hit the driver in the head. His head was slumped over. He was foaming from the mouth. His eyes were rolled back. I really didn't think he was going to make it.
All right, Ronnie, thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me.
Let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
All right, I originally was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm what they call a ATLian. And like they like to say around there, I was grown there and not flown there. So I was born in Atlanta, and then I grew up south of the airport in an area they call the Clayco now. You know, pretty good schools back in the day. It was a pretty good place to grow up. From there, graduated high school at the age of 17 and joined the Marine Corps. My first stint was in the 1990s, you know, the good old peacetime 90s, when old Wild Bill and Newt was running the show. And there was nothing going on. The Cold War was over. The Gulf War was done. And it was like the ultimate peacetime. You know, I was stationed on Okinawa for a year, Camp Pendleton, Southern California for the rest of the term. And, you know, the days in Okinawa, they were just wild. It was 18 years old, red light districts, and it was just a really wild time. And there was no threat of the war. There was no threat of any kind of war. This was pre-9/11.
Was that disappointing for you?
At the time it was, because, you know, just, you know, that's what you joined for. But at the same time, my thinking then was GI Bill, try to go to college.
And let me back up. Did you grow up thinking you would join the military?
Yeah, I did, because I was always, my father was in Vietnam. He was drafted. And now he wasn't no gung-ho type, and rarely said much about it. But being that my father was in Vietnam, I wanted to do something. And then I thought Marine Corps to do something different. You know, I just knew I wanted to get out of the Clayco. I'm not one of those guys who could spend my whole life living in the same zip code that I grew up in. Consider myself an explorer. And so 17 years old, I had to go. I just had to do it. And the good thing about it, without the war going on, I did get to see a lot of the world. Then I get out of the Marine Corps, and here I am back in the Clayco. I went through a period. I remember my first job. I was working for the Clayco Water Authority and reading water meters. And this was kind of like a trigger point. So I didn't just get off and running going to college yet. I had this job reading water meters. You know, I had the blue mechanic pants on and the light blue work shirt tucked in with my name on it. I was reading meters in kind of this golf course community in the Clayco. I was in the front yard physically reading the meter, and some gal was laying out in the sun. She recognized me and she goes, "Hey, Ronnie, is that you?" And I looked up and I said, "Oh, shit." And I'm standing there reading her water meter, man, with the mechanic pants on and the blue work shirt. And she goes, "Well, I thought you was in the Marines." And I'm like, I just got out, hon. "Oh, okay. So you're working with the..." And so at that point, I'm like, man, I got to use my GI Bill. So just boom, within roughly a year after getting out of the Marine Corps, I go to Kennesaw State, spend 4.5 years there.
Studying?
Social science education. So I was training to be a history teacher. And so I do my 4 years, and then 9/11 happened my junior year of college. Now, at this point, you're kind of like the opposite of gung-ho. You're like, I done did my time, right? So people that's been in the military, you know, you do 4 years active and 4 years inactive. The 4 years inactive, you're a civilian. You do whatever you want. You're not in no more, but you're subject to a recall, which never happens. But 9/11, it did happen for people. I got my honorable discharge in the mail that completed me from all active and inactive service on September 1st, 2001.
Wow.
And then at the time, I'm thinking, hey, baby, this is my golden ticket out. Y'all can't call me back. You can't call me. I'm good, man. It's all good in the hood. Try to call me. And I was kind of like, I'm hoping y'all would call me just so I can tell you I got my discharge, baby. So I graduate, and then I got married when I was like 27-ish years old. I got married. I'm back in the burbs, a place called Hampton, back on the south side. And I was teaching high school, a very good school. I had good students.
And what did you teach?
World history and current issues. A lot of people think, oh, it's an easy job. You can get the summers off and all those holidays. I served 2 branches of service, infantry, combat, and I always say that teaching was probably the most stressful thing I did. So I taught for a couple years, and then during my second year is when I got the divorce. And at this point, I start thinking, these 2 wars are going full bore. I can't be playing house. You got to get, man.
Did you feel like you were just kind of aimless a little bit, or what?
Yeah, the war's going on, 2 of them, and yeah, at that time, this is my purpose. The burbs ain't working for me. I almost felt, I'm not the most spiritual guy, but I just felt I'd being led there. I really wanted to do something different. I did go talk to the Marines, but the Marines like young fresh meat. And they kind of blew me off like, fill out a paper. They see this 32-year-old man that's been out for 10 years. And so then I was like, well, I went to the Army. And I wanted to do something different. My father was in the Army in Vietnam. In the Army at the time, they needed, they were stop-lossing people.
So that was what, 2000?
7, 8-ish.
And that was when they were, Obama and they were amping up Afghanistan.
Iraq was going through a surge. And then they're about to surge Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And so by 2007, you already had guys that had done multiple tours. The Army was extended tours to 15 months. They just needed people. So when I went to the Army, they're like, hell yeah. I'm like, I've been out for 10 years. It's all good, man. And what do you want to do? I said, I want to do infantry. And
were they surprised at that?
Oh, yeah. Because... yeah, this older dude wants to come do infantry. That's a young man's game. So, and what coincided, which was good for the Army and the war effort, was the economy just tanked in 2008. You probably remember, The economy went to shit. A lot of people lost jobs, laid off, so then a lot of older people joined the Army. I get to the Army, and I do a prior service basic. It was a 5-week refresher. They gave me my rank that I'd gotten out of the Marines with, but I had to do all the training all over again because I'd been out for 10 years.
Yeah.
There was some dudes in their 20s. There was some guys in their 40s. And it was a lot of people there because of the economy. And there was one guy there who was 50 and been out of the Navy for 25 years, man.
What did training consist of?
I thought it would be like a gentleman's course. We're all prior service, man. It's not our first rodeo. There were people that had already been to Ranger School. There were guys that were former Marine Corps and Army grunts, guys that had been to Airborne School. So I figured it would be a gentleman's course since we're all prior service. And we got off the bus and they gave us the biz, man. I walked off the bus with a big-ass duffel bag thinking I'm going to have like the weekends off, and this was at Fort Sill. They just gave us the biz, man. They treated, and a lot of us were like kind of salty because we were like, why they treat, man, we're prior service. They can treat us like we've never, but it only lasted 5 weeks. It wasn't physically demanding to me.
They just treated you like dirt? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And out of 250 people, like 4 or 5 of us were infantry. And I just remember that drill sergeant's like, what in the hell are y'all doing, man? So then they sent me to Fort Benning.
I want to back up just for a second before you keep going. Why did you choose infantry?
If I would have done some non-infantry support role and spent a year in Iraq or Afghanistan on a fob like Bagram, where there's Burger King, Pizza Hut, country line dancing night at the MWR, massage parlors and European women, if that would have been me, I would have finished the tour and I'd have felt like I didn't do enough. Now,
in a way, you were kind of scratching an itch that you had.
Yes.
By choosing infantry.
Right.
You wanted to do something.
Right. I wanted to be, whatever it was going to be, I wanted to be in the front of it. And even as an older dude that was prior service, I didn't know quite the extent what I was really getting into, man. We get to Fort Benning, and they put us in a basic training platoon, in its 4th week of training. Keep in mind, I spent 5 weeks at the other place. The 5 of us get to Fort Benning. They're in their 4th week of training with no special privileges, like none. And I just remember thinking, like, why didn't they just send us here first, man? We'd be a week ahead, you know. And the opening speech was like, I don't give a fuck what service you came from, what rank they gave you to come back. Here you're a fucking private training to be an infantryman. I was older than the drill sergeants. I was 32 years old, and I was older than all my drill sergeants. By 2008, these drill sergeants had already deployed multiple times to Iraq. So you ain't gonna act like, you ain't gonna flex to them. When I was going through Parris Island, the prior service boot camp, I just fit in and went through the training. I didn't try to be the hero of it. I just wanted to keep my mouth shut and just do it. But when I got to infantry school, I stuck out like a sore thumb because of my age and prior Marine. And so...
how did the young guys treat you?
As one of them, because I'm kind of immature in a way, which is part of that. Like, I was not above or beyond, like, and oh yeah, everybody there was right out of high school. They were either 18 or 19. I was 32, but I did the same old, like, college-age prank shit that they did. So they basically took me as one of them. In Army, you know, you have boot camp and AIT. They go to AIT, and it's like weekends off, going to school. To our infantry school, it was like 14 weeks of boot camp. It was just basically boot camp the whole time. Eventually, one time, the drill sergeant, he comes out there one morning, and we're all standing at attention, and he just blurts out, what was Motley Crue's first album? And I just said, Too Fast for Love, drill sergeant. He goes, you old motherfucker, get in my office. I went in there, and he was like, look, Bruce, you know, I know you've already been here and done this. You've played this game before. So as long as you show up on time in the right uniform, nobody's going to fuck with you no more.
How did you do physically? Did you feel like you kept up with everybody at that age?
Yeah, because the 5-week refresher got the dad bod off of me at the time. Now, it was rough on me being in my early 30s. I smuggled in ibuprofen, you know, because I had miles on me, man. I'd been in the Marines. I did a lot of back-breaking blue-collar labor. I unloaded trucks for a couple years, heavy meat trucks. And yeah, those hikes, man, they hurt. You know, I wasn't 18. We did 12 to 15 mile hike. You know, you wearing all that shit, that armor. One dude passed out, just boom. And you know, the way they stick something up to get your temperature. And this guy's, I don't remember his exact temperature, but his temperature was so high that it almost killed him. And so they sent him home after he, 100 and some odd temperature. I'm not sure what it was. I was salty the whole, like, why am I doing this prior service? But once I got to my unit in Alaska, I was glad that I did it. So if I'd have showed up at an infantry unit with dad bod infantry unit straight off the streets, been out of the military for 10 years, it would have been really rough on me. You know, whatever you did in basic training pales in comparison to what you get to the infantry unit. So those drill sergeants, they treated us like shit. And, one thing about the Marine Corps basic, your seniors like your daddy, like those drill instructors give you hell. But at the end of the day, you might get the senior drill instructor will get you all together and like, hey guys, you're one step closer to being a Marine, you know. The way they treated us at that time in the Army Infantry School, there was a method to the madness. When that drill sergeant called me in his office and he said something to the effect of, listen, man, you're going to war. You understand we got 2 wars going on. You and your 18-year-old buddies out there, you're going to go to one or the other, Iraq or Afghanistan. And he said, please understand there's a method to my madness. The enemy didn't give a fuck about your feelings. You know, what I later found out, the enemy don't give a fuck about your feelings. And they knew that a bunch of 18-year-old kids were going to be thrown into it.
Did you have a preference at that time, Iraq or Afghanistan, or did you even care?
Everybody was thinking Iraq. Iraq was getting all the news because that's where most of the troops and most of the fighting was. So Afghanistan was like a forgotten war at the time. The Taliban was assumed to be defeated. We got our orders to Afghanistan. Some of us were a bit disappointed. Now, this is fast forwarding. I remember when I went on my R&R 9 months straight, everybody from Iraq and Afghanistan goes through Kuwait to shuffle out on leave. And there's a whole lot more guys coming through that were in Iraq, and Afghanistan was like a small part of it. I asked one of the guys, an infantry guy in Iraq in 2009, something to the effect of, y'all getting into anything? And he's like, no, not really. We had there was one IED that we found it before it went off. Iraq was like a dud in 2009, and they're like, man, I wish the people who were gung-ho, I wish I was in Afghanistan with y'all. We got there was only 30,000 troops there, maybe a little less. And by the time we left, there's 100,000 troops. And so Obama wanted to focus on Afghanistan and try to defeat the Taliban once and for all. And that's an ambitious proposition considering that Afghanistan's never been conquered, not by Genghis Khan, not by Alexander the Great, not by the Persians, not by the British, and not by the Soviet Union. And so here we are thinking, yeah, well, we're going to do this job once and for all. So it didn't take long in 2009. It was like, yeah, this is the place to be if you're trying to, quote unquote, get some. Back then, the 25th Infantry Division that's in Hawaii, they had one airborne brigade in Alaska, and that's where me and Joey land. And so then me and Joey are sitting in a room, and all of a sudden 30 or 40 people file into this blank room, and I look around, 30 cherries, new guys, 30 or 40 cherries are checking in. I look around, none of us are airborne qualified. And that's when I got it, and I looked at Joey, and I said, this unit's about to deploy. And he's like, what makes you say that, man? And I'm like, why else would there be 30, 40 cherries checking in here non-airborne? They need swinging dicks, and we're it, man. And they need asses for the effort. And so that's what it was. That unit, we landed in Alaska, and we deployed 4 months later. The good thing was our NCOs, all of our team leaders and squad leaders had served a 15-month extended tour in Iraq during the surge. Anything above the captain level, I'd go ahead and say it now, was shit. And I hate to say that, and as we get into this, but the squad leaders, the team leader were great. And that's why I didn't show up like acting like I'm some badass, like, oh, I'm a former Marine. These guys are going to, no, because I'm a former Marine from the 90s, baby. Peacetime Marine. I think they used to call me the Peace Corps, Marine Corps, like you was from the Peace Corps or something. And, I ain't going to flex when these NCOs had done spent 15 months in the deadliest part of Iraq. So no, I just went along with the other dudes and followed the lead. Then we...
What was it like landing in Iraq or in Afghanistan? What was that? What was your impression when you got off the plane?
So at first we get to Bagram, which, and the whole time we don't know where we're going. Think about this. Last weekend in Alaska, our Friday formation, company formation, before he's going to let us loose for the weekend, and we're coming back and leaving Monday.
Yep.
Monday or Tuesday, So, and I remember in that Friday formation, the captain's like, all right, guys, this is the last time we're going to see each other as a company until we get back to Alaska. And so that's the first time I really realized it. Well, everything we're going to do is in small movements. Ain't going to be this big, endless convoy like the first, or like
the Gulf War I
or Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is good. There's only 100-ish people in a company, and he's like, this is the last time. 3 infantry platoons and support. And that's at that point, the weekend before we leave, I'm like, that's when I really figured it out that this is going to be small unit stuff. And we get to Bagram, spend a day or two there, not long. Bagram, like I said, massive Burger King, Pizza Hut. You know what I mean? And what sucks is the people, we'll get into this, the people calling the shots, those way up officers are like on Bagram.
Which like living in stateside, kind of.
It really is. It's like a stateside base, man.
Yeah.
So we go from Bagram. I think we went to another place called Sharana, which is maybe a Bagram light. There's a Pizza Hut there. It's not like Bagram, but there's a couple amenities. And so then we just round up on this airfield. We get on these Chinooks, or helicopters, flown by Russian contractors. And I'm looking around, like, I grew up in the Cold War. You know what I mean? And I'm like, really? these motherfuckers, descendants of the Soviet Union, are flying us around. You know, the pilots were Russian contractors, I think, with Jingle Air. And I'm looking around at my buddies like, I bet most of these dudes don't remember the Cold War. I mean, they were shit and yellow when it ended, you know. And so, and I remember the Cold War, man. And so then, and I'm like, you know, and I kind of had this kind of inward like hatred.
Yeah,
you remember how it was
in
the 80s, man. You know, you thought nuclear war seemed inevitable, man. Like, I remember growing up thinking, nuclear war is going to happen. But then it didn't. So,
and did those Russian guys talk or nothing?
Just they didn't converse with us, you know. So here's where it gets real. So this fucking helicopter lands on the helicopter landing zone, just a little clearing. We get off the helicopter, and as soon as we get off, the guys that had been there for a year are getting on, and these guys were dirty, emaciated looking. 1,000-yard stares on their faces. I mean, I call it, they look like the living dead, man. And we're there to replace them. And I mean, their uniforms were ripped up. We get off the plane with all our new clean shit. And these guys just look all haggard, you know, stumbling on the plane, get our gear. And this is where the elevation kicks your ass. So it's a place called Malakshey, Combat Outpost Cop Malakshey. And Malakshey was over 8,000 feet, way up on a mountain in the forest. Like I think I seen a documentary one time where they was like 95% of Afghanistan's desert. I'm like, well, I must have been in that 5% because it was a thick ass forest in Malakshey, man. Thick forest, mountains. And so helicopter lands, they get on, we get off, grab our gear, and we hike up to the top of this mountain. And then a couple times I'm just bending over. Oh, shit. That thin air. I mean, we go from sea level Anchorage, boom, 8,000 feet, Afghanistan. And you got to get acclimated, man. That was kicking my ass. So we walk up to the combat outpost. And
how big would it be?
Okay, so it was literally probably half the size of a football field, shaped like a triangle. It had 3 guard towers, basically 3 guard towers shaped like a triangle. There was a mortar pit in the middle, a little shed with a MWR, which had like maybe 5 computers and a phone and some MREs and a TV. There was an aid station under, I think it was the East Tower. So it was just 3 guard towers, half the size of a football field, and no.
Did it have wire around it or no?
So it was what they call big old HESCO walls.
Okay.
Like these big old things filled with dirt.
Mm-hmm.
It was HESCO walls. Barbed wire over the tops of the HESCO walls. There was one entrance in and out, kind of below the North Tower, that had a little road that. So the helicopter landing zone, I'd say, was about 200 meters below the COP. A little trail going up to the COP. There was a curvy gravel road that went in, and there was only one way in, one way out, and there was no running water here.
So water came from the helicopter, or did they drop it in?
We had just pallets of bottled water that the Russians would drop in whenever they resupply us.
Yeah.
So basically, we were like 30 and 40 dudes, something like that. We were 30 to 40 guys on top of the mountain at this combat outpost, no running water. We pissed in piss tubes that rose from the ground, and we had these homemade stalls made of plywood that we shit in, and the shit was like went into a bag and it was collected and burned in a pit. And people would call bullshit on this. This is like more unbelievable than any shoot 'em up bang bang story, right? People would tell me I'm full of shit on this probably more than anything we're about to talk about. So my first 77 days on Cop Malakshey went without a bath. I went 77 straight days without a bath. The only reason we got the bath is we drove to the bigger fob where the rest of the company was. We did a mission and we spent the night at the fob, and so we took a shower. So the guys that weren't on that mission, they went even longer. And the way I did it, because I'm kind of metro man, I like to be clean and fresh, And so I would just strip off all my clothes, take a little whore bath with baby wipes. I would strip off all my clothes and wipe off with baby wipes. And sometimes I'd pour water over me. Some guys made some homemade thing where somebody would just pour water into a funnel that they could maybe lather off. And so we had no running water. Yeah, and then that's why baby wipes were like, anytime you got a care package, like, send me some cigarettes and baby wipes. Because there was no PX. That Bagram had a PX.
Okay, and Talk, you were near the Pakistani border.
Right. We were about 3 kilometers from the Pakistan border.
And it was a no-no to go over the border.
Right, which made it tough. The enemy could hit you, head back, and they used to also shoot mortars from there that we couldn't hit back. And so... And
tell me, when you landed there, did they go, oh, this hill represents this strategically, or this is what you're going to do? Or was it just like, here you go?
No, here it is. The unit that was there got on the plane. They left like one NCO back to kind of show us the ropes. And that was it. Just basically 4-hour guard duties in the guard tower. And there was like a 50 caliber machine gun, 240 machine gun up in there. And
are you excited at this point? Or are you just like,
yeah, I was. Because this, and basically from this outpost, we did a lot of dismount walking patrols, squad size, like 13-ish people, and we would just patrol around that area. And so we got to see in a lot of and this when I realized, like, man, these people live in the Stone Age, man. They live in mud houses. It doesn't look I can't imagine it looking any different than 500 years ago, man. There was no paved roads. I've never been to Kabul. I've heard it might look kind of first world. Well, Kabul wasn't part of my deal, baby. It was
no electricity.
No electricity, no running water. Yes, and so we intermingled. We did patrols in those areas around that combat outpost. And
how did they treat you, the villagers, the people that live there?
They didn't want us there. Shake your hand, smile in your face, hit you when you walk away. And I remember one particular time, I'm out there, these kids would come up to you, hey, mister, and try to get, you might, if you had some candy, pens, for some reason they like pens, give the kids, try to give a pen to an American kid. They, you know what I mean? So they really wanted pens or whatever. And so I remember one of them, he couldn't have been more than 12, 13 years old. And he's like just pointing at my cigarette. And he's like, I'm like, you want a cigarette? And so I'm like, I hand him a cigarette. And then he motions for the lighter. And I'm like, hey, you want me to smoke it for you too? And I lit his cigarette. And he just tapped his chest in appreciation like they did and walked off, And I just thought, man, what? It's a different world out there. It was just mainly an outpost.
And what was the first kind of real exciting thing that happened out there, the first real dangerous thing that happened?
All right, so the first thing, it was the guy that was showing us the ropes. It was his last time there. It was his last night there. This was about, I'm pretty sure it was the 7th night. We slept in these overseas shipping containers that had 6 people crammed in there, 3 bunks inside an overseas shipping container.
Are they above ground or half in the ground? Are they just sitting on the ground?
Well, yeah, and then they reinforced with sandbags.
Okay.
It almost like it was kind of in the side of
I see, in the side of a hill.
With a sandbags.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, as far as the burn pit, not taking a shower for the whole time we're there, which ended up being about 5 months. The burn pit, that smoke was, we were always just kind of stained and gray.
Is that going every day, the burn pit?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Any supply, any shit, cardboard, plastic, everything. Anything that was consumed on that little outpost was burned in that pit. And so, and that smoke, we slept 50 meters from it, man. So, I'm laying in the bunk, breathing some burn pit smoke. reading the Maxim magazine, because just reading the magazine, and then all of a sudden, just something. Remember, this is my first experience, and seventh night there, and then something goes boom, and it was kind of getting dark. Actually, it kind of was dark, I believe. And so to back up, I remember my squad leader, Sergeant Stan, good squad leader. He had said something to the effect that, like, hey, listen, if something happens and we kind of separate or whatever, just meet in the MWR. The MWR that was in the middle of the cop with the TV in there. And so if anything happens, just go in the MWR. So all of a sudden, just boom, something goes off. And then maybe a couple more, they were shooting mortars at us. And somebody, Sergeant Fink, maybe somebody else, or somebody walks in there and he's like, Wimes. He was a real high-strung dude, stuttered, because he was excited. And I just remember he comes in there, he's like, firing rockets at us. So, and I heard, as I just jumped up, threw my gear on, and then Sergeant Fink comes in there. He slept in there, and he was like, y'all need to link with your squad leader. Now, Sergeant Stan, literally slept the next container over. He was just a couple steps away. And and it was dark out, and I should have looked for him. I should have just peeked over there, but I was just, hey, first time, man. I was nervous. And I snatched up Blackie. He was in my team and squad. And I said, come on, Blackie, let's go to the MWR. And me and him had to put our stuff on, night vision, and just took off running towards the full bore towards the MWR. And somewhere like between the mortar pit and the MWR, when we were like close to the damn door, something just boom. Right to the left of us, man. I felt that ground. I don't know exactly where it went off. I just felt the ground shake and a flash of light, just boom. And then we busted through that door like a swirl of dirt. And we walked in the MWR, turned the lights on, and we're the only ones in there. And we look at each other. I looked at Black. I remember his eyes were just fucking huge. And I said, man, did you see that? He goes, yeah, dude. And we're both just sweating, big bug-eyed. And I said, where the fuck is everybody? And he's like, dude, I don't know. And I'm like, weren't we supposed to meet here? And we're like walking in circles, pacing around, fidgeting. There's some more explosions. By this time, the 50 cals from the towers are rocking our guys. And we're just looking at each other like, what the fuck, man? What do we do? And finally, the NCO from the prior unit walks in there, and he's like, what are y'all doing? And I'm like, we're trying to link up with our squad. And then he just laughs and says, he goes, y'all go back to where you came from. And so I was like, come on, man. And it's like 1, 2, 3, boom, let's go. And we take off hauling ass, and we get back to the cans down there. And then Sergeant Stan's like, where the fuck have you two been? And he kind of laughs. He's like, he's like, hey, man, next time, walk over here before you go running off like fucking cowboys. And so then at some point, the FOB Boris that supported our outpost, which is about maybe 7-ish kilometers away, they started firing artillery from there back at what was known as Rocket Ridge. Rocket Ridge is where they like to launch rockets from. And they just started firing the artillery. Yeah. And then it was over. It's just like that. And at that point, the lieutenant put us in for our CIB, the combat infantry badge. So within a week of being there, we're getting our combat infantry badge. And at that point, think about it, a lot of people spend a lifetime in the Army. Like, let's say if you joined in 1975 and got out in 95, did your 20 years, no combat infantry badge. If you served any time, mostly during the 70s, 80s, or 90s, and here we are 1 week in country getting our combat infantry badge, which is every grunt's wet dream. That's kind of like, yeah, man, once you get that CIB on is when you feel like you've made it. Now, to be honest with you, even though me and Blackie almost got smoked by the rocket, I mean, we felt lame for earning it that way. And I mean, most of the platoon, the NCOs had already had theirs from Iraq. Okay, but now the whole platoon, and we all felt lame, like, you really envisioned yourself earning it in some vicious firefight rather than just taking a few mortars. But that's when old Stu, which was my team leader from Utah, old Stu, he just said, hey, man, he goes, hey, Ronnie B., you'll really earn that motherfucker soon, And then things just got a whole lot worse. And so what became basically the 5 months at Cop Malaksheh was just marked with patrols and just patrols in the mountains, shuras, meet and greets with the locals. We would sometimes spend the night up on a mountain. We would hike out a couple clicks, walk up on a mountain, spend the night. And then one incident, we spent the night on the mountain. The next morning, excuse me, I got sick as fuck. I got real sick, and it later became known as the Afghan butt flu.
What were the symptoms of that?
So the symptom, it only lasted like 24 hours. It was like a 24 to 48 hour bug to where you just had the you were nauseous, runny nose, and just wicked butt piss. I felt bad for the guys that had to burn the shit because, I mean, when you had and being that there was no hygiene, there's no running water, no real way to, so it basically spread through the platoon like a wildfire. And all of a sudden, everybody's just blasting butt piss into the damn shitter. And those poor guys, I hate to be the guy that have to collect it and burn it. But so we're walking down the mountain, and all of a sudden, I'm nauseous as hell. I'm sweating profusely. My nose is running. We get to the bottom and then do a halt. And Sergeant Stan's like, you okay, old man? And I can tell something ain't right with you. And then so the medic comes and looks at me, and I've got a high fever. He can tell I'm nauseous, high fever. And he's like, yeah, you caught something in the bush. And locally, our company, that was our platoon medic. A part of the company was spending the night in the village of Malaksheh. They had the vehicles, convoy. And the first sergeant happened to be there with the company medic. And they came over, and that medic, he stuck me with it, gave me an IV in the field. And our lieutenant was kind of panicking, like, we got to move. And then Sergeant Stan's like, sir, he's sick. He's fucking sick. He's not bullshitting you. And so I think they gave me like three bags. He pumped me with like 3 bags of IV to give me enough juice, because when going back to Cop Malaksheh, it was a couple clicks uphill, straight uphill. And so I made it back to the cop, and then as soon as I walked in there, it just collapsed, and then one by one, I noticed the old Stu. He woke up one day looking shitty, and I'm, you got that Afghan butt flu. And so basically, but it only lasted like 24, 48 hours, and then nobody ever caught it again. It's like, once you got that, maybe it's kind of like the corona, once you got it.
You're immune to it or whatever.
Yeah, and you're filled full of whatever, God knows what, that they give you before you go. All the shots, anthrax, give us smallpox. They quit giving that out like 1970, right? But so the 5 months, and so at one point we had gotten, so Fob Boris, it wasn't like Bagram or Sharana. There was no restaurants or nothing. But at least what they had was, so when we did laundry on Malaksheh, it was just wash your shit in a bucket with soap.
And bottled water.
Bottled water and soap. Shave with bottled water. But then Fob Boris they had like a little Haji shop where you could buy some cigarettes and some bootleg DVDs. And you could drop your laundry off for them to do. Had a little barber shop, things like that. Had a good chow hall that was open 24/7. The ladies give Gomez a shout out. She did a good job. Her and I can't remember the other gal's name, but they were two cooks. Ran a good chow hall. It was open 24/7. And so we kind of start hearing about this. And
from your hill.
What would happen is first platoon that was at the cop or the fob would drive our convoy out with our mail. And I just remember my lieutenant saying, or their lieutenant saying, "Damn, Bruce, you're going to feel like you're in heaven." When I was driving him up the hill. You're going to feel like you're in heaven when you get to Boris, and he's telling me. And so we got kind of salty. And so then the bright idea was we're going to just leave I'm in third platoon. We're just going to leave third platoon out there. They're going to spend the whole deployment on Cop Malikshay, and we'll just send a firing team at a time back to Boris so they can 3 days take a shower.
Yeah.
And we were like, what? No, really? You going to leave us up here? First platoon gets to stay down there with all that shit? Taking showers and eating ice cream? And I just, but what had happened is the order came down to tear down the cop. Now, I want to say that when we got the mail, I get this letter from my Vietnam vet father. My dad, he never had a computer or email. He wrote a hand letter. I opened it up. You could tell it was torn from a notebook. And it was telling me some things. And I just remember the last line was, he goes, "Don't be a hero and don't be afraid to pull the trigger." Never forget that. The last line of the letter from my father, "Don't be a hero. Don't be afraid to pull the trigger." And that was the inspiration. And so...
so at that point, how far in are you at this point?
So we'll go ahead and skip ahead. So at about 5 months into it...
So everything's pretty mellow till 5 months in.
Yeah, this is when it kicks up.
Okay.
And looking back, well, this is going forward. They really didn't want to mess with you too bad. When you're on the ground, what we didn't realize is even though it sucked up there, we were secluded. We were safe. We were high on a mountain. If they wanted to attack, it was steep. Like if they really wanted to attack, they had to go straight uphill to get to you.
Yeah.
Now, they could hide in those forests. And, one time we did get a gist where our interpreter would scan the radio traffic, and they get a gist in that it's imminent. They're going to attack. We're getting attacked. And so when that happened, we knew what time it was. The guys in the towers would hunker behind those machine guns. The couple of Humvees, they would...
So you had vehicles on your camp?
Like 4 Humvees.
Okay.
They would get up in the Humvees that had a Mark 19 or a 50 cal, and then all of us would get along those HESCO walls looking down with our night vision. And I'll just never forget old Sergeant Stan. He was pretty gung-ho. He hunkers up beside me, and he's like, "Come on, you motherfuckers. I'll send you to your fucking Allah." And he just screams that in the middle of the night. But the attack never come. Now, I do want to mention, so what I mean, they really didn't mess with us besides mortars, because our lieutenant at the time, Sam Perlick, he was pretty good. He had us active, because what we thought, the people we relieved, they didn't do a lot of patrols or nothing. They just hunkered in on the mountain. And I think one of the first patrols we went on, the villagers, they said that we were the first soldiers they had seen since the bearded ones, the special forces guys.
Yeah.
So our lieutenant had us pretty active. We were a squad was hiking around there every day, and when you're on the ground, you're spread out and you're tactical. You're tactical and you're spread out.
Yeah.
What fucked us is we'll get to later. Once we started driving, that's when the shit happened. That's when they could just set up and hit us with RPGs. We'd been there a little while. Our very first mounted mission, we decided we're going to do a 4-vehicle convoy from just a 4-vehicle convoy in the Humvees. And that's when this is when I first learned how incompetent the ANA, Afghan National Army, ANA. This is when we drove over to Fob Boris.
What was your intent? What were you doing in the convoy?
We were just going to drive around the different villages, stop, and the lieutenant was going to meet with the locals, have a shura. They're all going to sit Indian style and drink some chai and fill each other full of shit. You know, empty promises. So this one, we're just going to drive around and stop in little villages. And so we get to Fob Boris, and this is where we took that shower. And we go to the ANA side of the Fob, the Afghan National Army. And we're looking at these guys. This is the first time we're going to interact with them. They're going on the mission with us.
Yep.
And I see all these rocks and sticks in the ground. And I'm standing by old Joey. And I'm like, what the? I looked at Joey, and I noticed there was an American explaining the mission through an interpreter to the Afghans.
Yeah.
Basically using rocks and sticks because they can't read maps. Later, the literacy rate amongst the Afghan National Army was like 10% in their own language, man. So here they are, and I look at Joey C, and I'm like, dude, these guys can't read fucking maps, man. And he was like, yeah, we got to explain this shit by drawing shit in the dirt like sandlot football. And I'm like, oh, Lord, man. I would rather just not. You'll find I'd love to not be with these guys. Wait, man.
Yeah.
The way it all ended, we knew that. But anyway, so very first mounted patrol, and this is where it kind of becomes disheartening. So we spend 3 days rolling around with these Afghans. And one thing they did do, like we would stop and set up a perimeter, sleep for the night somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and they would cook for us. They cooked this nice goat stew, circular bread, and it was really good. And especially when you're up on an outpost, mostly eating MREs.
Yeah.
And I remember, and we're all sitting Indian style on a rug, and they bring out these tin trays just piled with goat meat. None of us had bathed in fucking forever. And the way they would eat, I remember they would just. So one guy hands me, and they insist that you eat. They want to serve. And so I remember. And I'm staring at it like, what am I supposed to do? There's no utensils. And one of them just cuffs his hand and boop. And I was like, shit, I guess that's what you do. So me and a couple of Afghans are just fucking scooping the damn goat and eating it, scooping it and eating it. And I'm like, damn, that's pretty good. I mean, man, when you ain't eating nothing but MREs and stuff, and I remember like one of my buddies, you gonna eat that shit? And I'm like, hell yeah, it's pretty good, try it. And I'm like, you don't get no utensils? And like Stan's like, fuck no, not here, baby. You in the stand. Eating with the Stone Age people. So so we pack up our shit to drive back to Malakshey. And on our very first mounted mission, at the end of it, driving back to Malakshey, boom, IED. I was driving the lead vehicle. I believe the lead with the lieutenant was sitting shotgun.
Is that a Humvee or an MRAP?
Humvee at this time. And the one right behind me, I could kind of feel the doop from it. And the Humvee behind us hit an IED. And I just remember the lieutenant's like, keep pushing. So I hit the gas. And then Smitty was up in the gun. He was the gunner, and the lieutenant's like, what's going on, Smitty? What's going on? And he's like, the vehicle behind us has been hit, sir. And being this was our first time, we probably shouldn't have. A driver and gunner always stays with the vehicle. That's the way it is. But I just remember we stopped the vehicle, and we ran back to go check on these guys. In reality, we should have waited because that's what they want you to do. That way they can fire off another, especially if it's command detonated, hit that vehicle. And as soon as everybody comes to help, a secondary, Stu was like, man, I'm surprised they didn't hit us with a secondary explosion but we went back there. Luckily, nobody was hurt. It just blew I sent you a picture. It just blew the front right across.
Yeah.
And so we get another vehicle down there to tow it. We'll hook it up somehow tow it. And then we got to finish our
Is this night when this happens?
No, it's in daytime.
Okay.
And so we got to drive up. At this point, the rest of the way back, we sent out dismounts that patrolled along the road, and we drove slowly back to so our very first mounted mission blew up a Humvee.
Was it a mine, you think? Or was it somebody, somebody was activated?
We didn't really, there's two kinds of, there's a one IED is like a mine. It goes off when the weight's applied, and another is a command detonated. We didn't really know. But I think from what we got involved with later, they was probably in the ground.
Yeah.
And so, first mission, boom, IED. And that kind of made it real. And so then we're there 5 months, and the commander gives the order, we're going to tear down Cop Malik. So, and this actually made us happy.
Because you thought, oh, we're getting out of here.
Right. So we're going to tear down Cop Malik to a bare piece of dirt like it didn't exist. Now, it took us a couple weeks. I mean, it was like some of the most back-breaking blue-collar. Imagine like a blue-collar construction job with no shower at the end. And we had local nationals came out there with heavy equipment and stuff to doze down the HESCO walls. And we basically just
tear it apart.
Just ripped every sandbag, poured poured that kind of. One thing that I didn't even. At one point, we had a close call. There was these guys, the MWR. They were like knocking out the walls to it before they went up and emptied the sandbags. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're okay.
So basically, let's say this is the roof. It just boom. It just the roof just collapsed. And luckily, nobody was inside there, because if they would have been inside there, it would have smoked them. And so we finally get to the point. We get this thing down to a mound of dirt. Helicopters have come in and flown off the Connex,
pieces,
the Connex boxes we slept in.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're literally going to drive to 5 Boris in a couple days. We got it tore down to a mound of dirt. And we're out there either sleep. We had like a gypsy camp set up to where we either slept on the ground or on a few cots. We had these tarps stretched out above to protect us from the sun, but obviously it ain't going to do nothing for a rocket.
Yeah.
So at this point, and so we have it down to a mound of dirt. We're dreaming of ice cream at 5 Boris, and old Bowe Bergdahl takes off and walks off of his combat outpost in the Paktika province.
So he's not very far away from you.
I don't know exactly where he was, but he was in the same province.
Yeah.
We were in the same unit in Alaska. So Bowe Bergdahl was in the 4th Brigade out of Alaska. He was in our sister battalion. I was in the 509th. He was in the 501st. There was 2 infantry battalions in that brigade. So one day, Sergeant Stan, he sees me and Stu, and he's like, "Hey, get the squad. Get up the squad. I got to talk to you. This is real important." And then me and Stu were gathering everybody, wondering, like, man, I wonder what's so important, what's so urgent. And he goes, "Guys," he's like, "something, some kid from Blackfoot Company 501st gathered up a few things and just walked off his outpost." And we're like, "What? What?" And I'm like, "Are you shitting me? He did what?"
Yeah.
He just took off. He just went walking. And he's like, so he left, so nobody knows where he is, and all operations in the brigade will cease, including this teardown, and all assets will go to finding this kid. And we're like, oh, man, when are we going to get to Boris at this point?
Yeah.
And so since we were just up on a damn mound, just a bare mound of dirt in the hills, no protection around us or anything, we were vulnerable, but we really couldn't do much to help. So what we ended up doing, we divided, like, each squad, we had 3 line squads plus a weapon.
Yeah. So
each squad would hike up out into the hills and set up for 8 hours, while the other 2 squads, one would pull guard while the other one slept. And it was just endless. 8 hours hiking out there and just setting up an overwatch. Hike, and another squad comes out, and you really can't sleep this whole time, man. And
you guys are vulnerable on that hill.
Right. And so then what sucked is unflattering narratives based off misinformation was getting back to the States.
Were you guys hearing that yourself?
Yeah, I think yes, we were. And so basically the news organizations put out that he was left behind on a foot patrol, which makes the unit look bad. And it's like Stan said, like, the worst thing an NCO could be accused of is leaving a man behind. And that's what the media put out there. I knew it was bullshit. We knew it was bullshit. We knew he walked off his cot. We can't say anything.
Yeah.
And so, and that right there changed everything on this deployment. And then so at some point, Afghans, they drove around in like Ford Ranger pickup trucks. The Afghans were like driving back from FOB, hit an IED, killed like 7 or 8 of them in the truck. So then basically at this point, after about 2 weeks, they knew that he had been captured by the Haqqanis or the Taliban, and then they got him to the Haqqanis. So about 2 weeks of spending the night on that bare dirt, Stan's like, okay, the Haqqanis got him, everything resumes. We go back to FOB, we're going to go to FOB Boris. So we finally go to Boris, and that's when, now, FOB Boris, what we didn't realize, we were so happy for the amenities.
The showers, food.
The laundry, the barber shop, the basketball court, the better gym. But what we didn't realize is the worst was coming. Because so then we get down there and we get the MRAP vehicle. Learn about it. And the MRAP's just like a big 11, 12-ton armored vehicle. It is very good for IEDs because it has like a V-shaped underside. It could take an IED like a boss, but the side armor was vulnerable because they used to shoot RPGs at it, and it would just blow through and pepper everybody inside with shrapnel. So once we got to FOB Boris, we're not just cooped up on this little outpost. Now we're going to be driving in 4-vehicle convoys in the MRAP. Now they did have cages they had these cages on the outside of the MRAP that would cause the RPG to like explode outside the armor, but we didn't have those. We didn't have them. So anyway, so at this point is when things got real. And then also there was a couple, about every time we drove around Malakshey, there was a couple other IED incidents but luckily nobody was hurt. So, but once we got to Boris, now that we got these vehicles, now we're driving like 30, 40 clicks to different places. We're farther reaching. And that's when Margall comes into play that we'll get into. So we're happy to be there for the amenities, but yeah,
it's more sketchy for what when you leave in the vehicles.
Right. And so, and at this point we had kind of gotten the feel, this is where we kind of got salty with the leadership, just to back up. It was like whenever we were out on an outpost, or whenever we were out on a mission, we were just staying in the bush. We would take mortars or rockets. Now they firing these things from several clicks away, and so nothing us grunts have on the ground can repel it. Like, they're out of machine gun range.
Right.
There's nothing we can do. Your only recourse is the lieutenant would call the FOB Boris, and request a fire mission where they would shoot artillery from FOB Boris. Most of the time when we were out in the bush, it would get denied. We would be taking rockets that we couldn't do nothing about. The lieutenant would call for a fire mission, and it would get denied. And then we started feeling really ill about this. Why? These officers, they didn't want civilian blood on their hands. They didn't want to be on CNN. And what we started realizing, and I'm not talking about the lieutenant and really not the captain, major and above, we just didn't feel like they had our backs, man. Yeah. Now, you can bet your ass if some FOB with an officer on there takes rockets, they're going to fire back. So we started getting real salty at the higher leadership. And it was either now that I look back, I didn't quite know then. It was either they didn't want civilian casualties. It's almost like if a U.S. soldier dies You can chalk it up as the war. But civilians, and what we realized, this is where we realized these officers are all about their career, the higher ones. They're all about their careers, man. And they don't want any ding on it. And they all have aspirations of putting a star or something. You dig what I'm saying? And so either they didn't want blood on their hands. And also when we were close to Pakistan, they're firing rockets from Pakistan that we can't fire back to. Well, then why the hell do you have us? Why do you have us in a place to where we can get shot at and not have nothing? We can't do nothing about it. Why do you even have us out there when we can't fire back at who's firing at us? Why are we 3 clicks from Pakistan, man? And so it's kind of getting a little sketchy about the officers. And then Bowe Bergdahl. So now when we get to Fob Boris, it's when we start cranking up these MRAPs. Another thing that changes that was different from being isolated on the outpost, the drugs, the hashish, the marijuana, the smack, heroin, that was all available. So the Afghan army had their side of the fob. We had ours. We could go on their side anytime as we pleased. And we also started doing guard whenever we weren't out in the bush, we were doing guard duty. It'd be one of us with 2 Afghan soldiers with the rifle.
Yeah.
I'm having a brain fart now. But AK-47.
Yeah.
2 Afghans with an AK-47. And that's when we first started. You could buy dope from one of them. And, I'm not, so.
So that was pretty common.
Well, I don't want to make it more than what it is.
Yeah.
But at Malakshey, we were isolated. By the time we get to Fob Boris, that's, if anybody wanted smack, they could get it. Now, I ain't going to lie, I wasn't hardcore, but I, take a little toke off the peace pipe every now and then.
Yeah.
And, but so then.
How common would you say that was among the guys?
Well, I tell you what, I don't want to drop names or nothing, but there was another platoon that was there from another company, and they would be in their room smoking hashish. It was probably might have been a nightly thing, man, whenever they weren't in the bush. And sometimes I'd mosey in there and, take a couple puffs with them, get a little rowdy. But then other times, I don't really know. They were somehow smoking opium, and that was kind of where I drew the line. I walked in there one day, and they had some kind of rock sitting in the floor, and they were pouring hand sanitizer. Somehow they had to get the rock moisture on the rock to. I don't want to pretend to know because I didn't stick around too long, but they were smoking opium some kind of way with the hand sanitizer. Yeah.
Was it kind of open knowledge? Like, did the officers know about that?
I don't know. They could have been oblivious. And we'll get into it later. One of our platoons that was at Margall, at some point they thought they had a problem. So here we are at Fob Boris. Things are different.
Yeah.
We're going to be driving like 30 and 40 miles now. And this is where it kicks off. You know how a lot of people think that we go on these glorious, noble terrorist hunting missions, where we're kicking in the door and getting the bad guys before they get us, right? But that ain't what happened. A lot of our missions were unnecessary, dumb shit, okay? So I guess we'll get into it. So there was some distinct firefights. So we're at Fob Boris, and we get a mission, right? And we're going to, now, Margall was a little, second platoon had a little combat outpost at a place called Margall, not to be confused with Marjaw. This was Margall. Marjaw got all the headlines. So to back up, we never had an embedded reporter. There was never no reporters. Nobody was ever recording us.
Yeah.
There was no documentaries being made. There was no glory, right? Other things had documentaries. Margall ended up what we realized we were oblivious to at Malakshey. Margall was the most dangerous place in our AO. And I remember just a couple years after the tour, I was watching a YouTube video, and this British reporter was reporting from Margall, and he goes, I'm reporting from the most attacked outpost in all of Afghanistan, and that was like 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Margall was real, and we were about to find out how real it fucking was, man. It was the Wild West. Basically, Route Volkswagen led you to Margall, and Route Volkswagen had cornfields on both sides the whole way down, and they would hide in those cornfields, and they'd just start shoot RPGs, start flying out of them, and it got to where every time we drove down Margall, something was going to happen, and we weren't. This is why we would drive down there.
How many's in your convoy usually? 4? 3?
4 vehicles.
All in wraps?
20-ish people. Like on these missions,
yeah,
the whole platoon would not go on all. Like they would just come up with a manifest, and about 20-ish guys would be on this.
How much foreknowledge did you have before a mission? Is it literally that morning? 5 minutes before?
Maybe the night before. We know we're going out there. So here's the first one, just to give people an idea of why we're getting our asses damn blown up and shot up. So Sergeant Hicks spins up the platoon. He's up the night before. He goes, guys, we got a mission. We're going to drive to Margall. So we're going to drive out there, and we're going to pick up a couple guys to go on leave. He goes, now why the frickin' bird, some helicopter can't just fly out there and pick these guys up and fly them so they can. So we're basically playing chauffeur to get a couple guys that are going to R&R.
How far do you got to drive to get there?
It's like 30-something clicks. I'm just god-awful, rutted out cornfield road, baby. And we were going to give somebody a piss test, okay? So get a couple guys to go on R&R. Give a guy a piss test because there was somehow at Margall there was a lot of pills and dope going around. I don't want to. They would either get them mailed in, and there was also like a pharmacy in the Margall Bazaar. The Margall Bazaar had like a little pharmacy, and this ain't the U.S. They sell all kinds of shit in that pharmacy. And we're going to give somebody a piss test, and then at the end, we're going to move into some neighborhood, and we're going to look for Bowe Bergdahl. So, when people, I remember when they first come out, when people say they show like 6 faces, 6 guys died looking for Bergdahl. No, there's no telling how many. There's more than that. A lot of people got injured, killed looking for that guy. So at the last of this, we're going to go in this village, and we're going to search for Bowe Bergdahl. It was a real shitty planned mission. We should have just got inside a helicopter. We should have gotten helicopters, like Sergeant Hickson. He was the acting platoon sergeant. He was a squad leader, and we had it's not my place I was doing what I was told, but our squad leaders could not stand the platoon sergeant. He was, they would say he was very incompetent. He was like a Venezuelan guy. You couldn't understand him, especially on the radio. You couldn't understand the way he talked. Me being a Joe, I'm just being a Joe. It's not my place to call him out.
Yeah.
But the squad leaders, you could just tell they did not like this guy. And Hickson, and now that all these years later, me and Hicks talk a lot, Stan, and I know a lot more about behind the scenes that I didn't know then. A lot of arguing behind the scenes, like, why ain't we? So Hickson believed they were just lazy. They didn't want to call. Hey, fuck, we're not calling. Just drive out there and we'll do what we tell you. So we drive out there to Margall, and we make it there, and we pick up the couple guys to go on R&R. One of them was second platoon's medic. He gets in the vehicle with me, and they give whoever. We park at the bottom of the hill. Cop Margall's way up on the hill, and they go up there. They give the dude a piss test. Whoever needed the piss test. Right. We pick up the 2 guys so we can drive them to Fob Boris so they can get on a helicopter and then eventually get to Bagram. And so we pick up the guys, and then we decide we're going to, at this point, we got to go looking in the village where they think Bowe Bergdahl might be. There was some type of intelligence that they feel like Bowe Bergdahl may be there. Now, Sergeant Hickson, later on, in his opinion, we might have been set up for an ambush, meaning they leaked out some bullshit information.
To get you guys to go there.
Right. And then the platoon medic, he's a smart guy. We talk. In his opinion, he thinks it may have been legit. Either way, they know about Bergdahl, and they're taking advantage of that situation to lure us. Now, this place was on the Pakistan border, and you remember 5 years later, they recovered Bergdahl in Pakistan. That's where they had him. So we mount up the guys to go on leave. We start driving down Route Volkswagen, and the platoon sergeant, call him Manny Fresh. Manny Fresh decides to split the convoy, which
is 4 vehicles.
Now it's going to be 2 vehicles. We're going to drive into some village. The 2 vehicles we were going to just sit in this wadi, big wide wadi surrounded with cornfields. Okay. Now let me back up a second.
And you're just parked. You're going to park?
Right. Now let me just let me put that on hold for a second, because I'm going to try to do this more chronologically.
Okay.
We're looking for Bergdahl. Keep that in your head.
Yep.
So before this happened, Fob Boris got peppered with rockets, and we started what our most hated mission was called a BDA, a battle damage assessment. Basically, the pattern was the enemy fires rockets at our base, and they had some type of radar that could detect where the rocket fired from, and so they'd pepper the fob with rockets. Artillery would blast back to where the rocket was fired from, and then an infantry platoon would just drive straight out to where the rocket fired from.
Almost immediately after?
Immediately.
Okay.
Immediately.
Okay.
So I can tell what you're understanding now is we were setting a pattern. I figured this out. So what ended up happening was every time the base took rockets and fired off artillery, infantry platoon drives straight out there, okay? And so, and then I just remembered, we all knew we're setting a pattern, and it got to the point to where we're driving into a bear trap because they knew how to get us out. They would fire rockets off timers sometime because they knew if they fired it off the timer, the artillery is not going to hit them, okay? Now, the reason we did the BDA is the whole bureaucracy bullshit politically correctness was either to see if there was any civilian casualties, to see if we damaged anybody's property so we could hand them $500 for their destroyed mud fence, or to see if we killed any farm animals. Killed some farm animals, we'll pay them off. Of course, they would probably kill one of their own fucking farm animals just to get the payout. And so keep this in mind.
Dude, that is insane.
So the reason I'm bringing this up,
that is insane.
We'll get back to the original. The enemy, even illiterate people living in mud huts, they knew how to draw us out. So we set a pattern. We were setting a pattern. Anytime we got spun up anytime the base got peppered with rockets and we knew we were the infantry platoon on duty, fuck, man, we going out, you know. And nobody could talk the higher leadership. Like, I'm sure those squad leaders would try to be like, don't you realize we're setting a pattern? Nope, don't want to hear it. Just get the fuck out there and do what you're told. So one of the first times it happens, we did like a little patrol there was a district center beside the fob where the locals would come to, and we did a little patrol over there. And while we was there, the base started getting hit with rockets. And I remember Blackie, he wasn't on that particular, so we immediately rushed back to the fob. Blackie wasn't on that particular mission, and he was like, man, I almost got smoked by a goddamn rocket. And I was like, what do you, he was literally just sitting in his underwear, like smoking a cigarette up against a HESCO wall, and it blasted the other side of it. So what happened was one of the MRAPs, the rocket flattened all the tires. So we had to, and these MRAPs are big-ass tractor-type tires. And yeah. This MRAP's sitting on 4 flat tires. And so immediately Manny Fresh is, we're going to do a BDA. But, we got a fucking MRAP sitting on 4 flat tires. So we have to change the tires, and we're trying to go as fast as we can, okay? And it's one thing to change one big ass tractor MRAP tire.
Right.
It's another thing when you got to change 4 of them, right? So we finally get these tires changed, and it's getting dark. And the command wanted that fucking BDA. I believe it came from like the battalion commander, lieutenant colonel. And so it starts getting dark. I think somebody mentioned, can we do it the next day? And Manny Fresh is like, no, we go now. And it took us a couple hours, however long, to get those tires changed. So I'm a gunner on this mission. I'm up in the gun behind a machine gun, and we're driving out there. We get to the Poe, the Poe is P-O-O, the point of origin. We get to where the rocket was fired from. No incidents yet. And by the time we get there, it's pitch dark. The dismounts leave the patrol up in there, and me and the driver stay with the vehicle. And there's 4 of us. And so the convoy gets back, or excuse me, the patrol gets back to the convoy. It's time to drive back to Fob Boris. And the genius platoon sergeant decides that we're going to drive blackout, meaning everybody's going to have their headlights off, and the drivers are going to use their night vision gear to drive. Bro, that night vision, it's like you have no depth perception. It takes a while to get used to. It's hard enough to walk in those things. I remember the first time we did a night mission from Cop Malakshey, most of us kept falling and busting our ass because there's loose rocks, man. You can't see where you're stepping. You know, we're trying to walk at night and we're falling and busting our ass. Every few, you just hear somebody, you know. So Manny Fresh, the platoon sergeant, and the squad leaders were just arguing with him. Like Sergeant Stan, he still feels bad to this day because he kept telling, Sergeant Stan was just being real loud about it. Like he's like, why would we can't? You don't want to drive blackout because none of these drivers have ever driven with night vision before. Never. And Sergeant Stan was trying to bring some sense to it. And he's like, we need to at least train, maybe we can spend a night or two letting everybody in the platoon drive around the fob with night vision. At least get used to it. Don't let this be the first time we do it. And Sergeant or Manny Fresh was like, no, get in the vehicles. We're doing this blackout. And so we take off, and I'm up in the gun. Smitty's driving, and I'm
How fast you going?
Slow. It's pitch dark, shitty dirt road. There's no paved roads over there. I think there's a paved road on the cover of this book. The only paved road that I ever seen was coming outside of that fob into the main village of around Boris, and that's probably because the Americans built it.
Right.
So we're on this god awful dirt road, and there's dips, and that's what Sergeant Stan was trying. He's like, "Listen, Sergeant, there's dips in the road. These guys have, and they argued. He really tried to make his point, but it was to deaf ears. We take off, all right. I'm up in the gun, and I'm looking through my night vision, and I'm like, to the left, to the right. And then all of a sudden, it almost felt slow motion the way it went. All of a sudden, we hit some dip, and the right side tires, they start coming off the ground.
Up. Yeah.
And thank God, so the way the formation, the lead vehicle would have the gunner would be straight ahead. Then like the second vehicle would be off to the left. The third vehicle would be opposite. You'd just be opposite, and then the fourth vehicle's facing the rear. So I'm facing to the right, and the vehicle, it starts. I think I always wondered what would have happened if I'd have been, facing, if it would have if it would have been going towards the barrel. I'm up in the gun, and I'm gunning a Mark 19, which is a grenade launcher, and this is the biggest and heaviest machine gun we got, with the biggest, bulkiest ammo, and the ammo, big ass Mark 19, ammo cans full of grenades strapped across from me.
Yeah.
So the vehicle starts to fall, and that thing ended up crashing. It almost went completely. If it would have went completely upside down, it would have killed me. But it fell over like at an angle. So I fell backwards. My ankles, my feet flung over my head somehow.
So you flew all the way out.
Well, no, I was strapped. I had a harness.
Okay.
And this is another thing. This was the first time the first sergeant had a good policy. All gunners must be strapped in, used a harness, like a little seat, just clips you. You put, it's, I don't know, it's some rig that goes over you, and you clip yourself to it. We had never used it before. I'd gunned a few times by then, and I'd never worn the harness. And by this, and I remember the first sergeant, straightforward said, guys, gunners will wear the harness. It's the first time I wore the harness, man. It could have saved me.
Yeah.
And the vehicle, it lands like that. The harness keeps me in, but I'm up there. I landed on the back of my head, my back, really hard. My ankles flipped up over. My ass was poking up. The heavy ass Mark 19 big metal machine gun just boom buried on my chest. Thank God for the armor. And the big ass bulky Mark 19 round strapped across from me just fell and hit me in the ass. And the little joystick that you've moved the turret with, boom, fell and hit me in the head. And I'm laying there. Everybody in the vehicle were just flipped over. I'm laying like that. And I can remember Sergeant Stan screaming, Bruce, you okay? And I couldn't hardly talk. And I was like, I'm all right. My mustard voice, I tried to muster up as much as I could. I'm like, I'm all right, Sergeant. And he goes, Bruce, can you hear me? Are you all right? And I said, I tried, I'm all right, Sergeant. And he's like, okay, man, we're going to go tight, buddy. We'll go get you out of there. And I'm stuck up in this damn turret. And I remember the medic, Sergeant Rodrigo, I called him. I can see these feet sprinting towards me because I'm like upside down. And these feet come sprinting towards me. And he slides in baseball, like a baseball style. And he sees that I'm okay to move. And he drags me from up under the vehicle. And then at that point, I was concussed. I had a concussion. And I was just kind of walking. I remember walking around feeling ditzy and silly, kind of laughing, like, oh, I'm all right. And so then, that heavy-ass armored door, that God knows how much it weighs, it had to be lifted like upwards because the hinges the hinges were on that side. It had to be lifted. So then they had to work on getting the guys out of the back of it. Right. And then they had some top hatches up where they opened up and grabbed these guys out. And so basically I had a concussion. I fucked my back up, but I knew at that point, I'm like, if I'd have complained about it, I'm sure they could have flown me to Bagram and gave me an MRI and I'd have been out of there. And I'm not trying to toot my horn, but at that point, I'm like, I'm going to stay over here and finish the tour. Just finish the tour. I'm good. There's people a lot worse than me.
How far in are you at this point?
About 6 months. It's about halfway.
Okay.
About the halfway point.
Okay.
All right, so they drag me up out of there. They get the guys out of the back. And what's funny, that dog platoon, we call them dog platoon because they come from dog company, they got spun up to drive out there to get us. And I just knew, I'm like, man, I guarantee you those guys were yucking it up, smoking some reefer and getting high, baby. And then they got, some, not all, I don't want to paint a select group in that platoon. They had some great guys in that platoon. Yeah. Great upstanding Sergeant Foch, when they finally got him, great platoon sergeant. Sergeant Foch, baby. But anyway, and I just remember thinking, so they drop convoy out with this. Imagine how big the fucking wrecker has to be that'll snatch this damn 12-ton MRAP, So they bring the wrecker, whether they were high or not, they got out there real quick, snatched the wrecker up, take us back, and they immediately take us just to get checked out, and that's for medical, and I'm okay, I'm good. I know I had a concussion. Yeah. And then the first sergeant was like, Bruce, aren't you glad you wore that harness, son? And I'm like, yes, first sergeant. Yeah. And so at that point, Stan went and confronted Manny Fresh away from everybody. And that's when he had the I told you so moment. And he was like, you motherfucker, you made us do this shit, blackout, making these guys do something, putting us in this position, guys doing something they've never done before. And it got to a point where, he threatened to whip his ass. And then Manny Fresh is like, I'll fucking demote you. And Stan's like, take my goddamn stripes, motherfucker, And, his men meant more than his stripes. But it was not Stan's fault, but he beats himself up over it. So that was our first shitty situation. doing a BDA at night.
Right. That was the first one for you guys.
Right. And so then the next one, let's get back into, we're looking for Bergdahl.
Okay.
The convoy split. And Manny, Sergeant Hicks and Stan argued with him about that. Like, bro, why are you splitting this fucking convoy? You going to leave 2 vehicles in this wadi? So I was in 2 vehicles sitting in the wadi while the other 2 vehicles drove around looking for Bergdahl. And it seemed like they were gone 2 or 3 hours, man. And it was almost like if they weren't going to ambush us, if they didn't plan on it, I bet they will be since we were sitting. So
right.
Now, Stan, I don't want to say panic, but he kept on the radio asking, what the fuck's going on? We got to get out of here, man. We got to get out of here, bro. The 2 vehicles were out of our view. We could not even see them.
Yeah.
And so at this point, we're sitting there for 2 to 3 hours. I'm not sure. And then all of a sudden, just boom, an RPG just smacked the fucking side of the vehicle behind me. Just boom, out the cornfield. All right? And there's windows on the side and there's windows in the back. And that vehicle's directly behind me. And I hear that damn sound. This is the first, real firefight to where this is real now. And there's only 2 of us, 2 vehicles.
Right.
So then I immediately look behind that window, and then I see a second RPG. I'm looking at it just boom, right in the side of the vehicle again. I didn't see it, from my point of view, I didn't see exactly where it hit. And then I just seen the gunner of that vehicle, Gus, was the gunner. It blew the sniper cover off, and he just dropped in the vehicle. He just fell inside of it. All right? I thought he was dead. Okay? I thought it killed him. But just like a fucking warrior, man, he rose back up into that turret. He had a Mark 19, and he was wounded. He was hit with shrapnel from one of those rockets, and he just started lobbing Mark 19 grenades into the cornfields. And then I looked at one RPG hitting the dirt a few feet back from our vehicle between us, and then I could see machine gun rounds. I could see dirt kicking up. They had a machine gunner going, and and so then I immediately...
Are they hidden? They're hidden in the cornfield?
Right.
You can't see them.
I couldn't from where I was. Now, What I found out later, Sergeant Hicks, he could eventually. So they were and what I did see, Sergeant Stan's facing this way. He couldn't really see what was going on. It was out of his view. And all of a sudden, what I seen after a couple of those RPGs hit that vehicle, I seen these massive plumes of smoke rising. Massive plume of smoke. And when an RPG fires, just big old plume of smoke. So that's where he's at. And so I screamed. I looked up and I screamed at Joey C. He was in our gun with a 50 cal. And I said, Joey, point that 50 at your 8 o'clock and fire that bitch. I said, fire that bitch. And then Stan, he screamed, light those motherfuckers up, Joey. And then so Joey started rocking the 50 cal into the cornfields. And so then I look back, boom, another RPG hits that vehicle. I think about 4 of them hit it.
Wow.
Now, at this point, I can't see exactly where. And, those guys are reeling, okay? And so then later on, I see Sergeant Rubio. Now, he was a gung-ho Puerto Rican. I loved him, but he was a gung-ho. This guy, obviously you'd see us infantry guys, but this guy was next level gung-ho. He was on his 4th or 5th deployment, and he fucking loved it. He loved to suck. He loved being dirty, and he just wanted to shoot people. He was one of those. I call it what my dad said about Vietnam. There's 1%. There's a 1% of people that really love that shit. Sergeant Rubio was one of them. And so I see him running beside a vehicle. So finally, that other half is coming back towards us, and that made me feel better. And I yelled up at Sergeant Stan. I said, Sergeant, we got a medic back here. Here comes Sergeant Rubio. We can go help. We need. And he was like, yeah. He goes, let's go, because I knew we had the medic from R&R. A medic was also in the hit vehicle, our platoon medic. So we jump out of the vehicle, and we run to what had happened. One of those RPGs hit straight into the door of that vehicle or in the window, and it just it hit the driver in the fucking head. Boom, in the head, kind of in the back. Somehow rung around and peppered. Hickson was sitting shotgun, the vehicle commander. He was peppered with shrapnel. He had shrapnel sticking out everywhere. And Kevin, the driver, his helmet looked like shredded cheese. The back of it looked like shredded cheese. That Kevlar looked like shredded cheese. I showed you a picture. It just hit him, boom. And they were both fucked up. Kevin, I didn't think he was going to make it, so we rushed over there. We tried to get his door open. Couldn't get it open at first. So I ran around back. We opened up the back of the vehicle, and these guys come filing out the vehicle. Everybody in that vehicle was wounded somehow mysteriously, but the doc. But I think the doc had a concussion, but he was the only one that didn't have shrapnel. So here comes one guy comes out, Jordy, blinded. He couldn't see. Shrapnel in his eyes. He couldn't see. Get Gus the gunner out of there. He was bleeding like hell, filled with shrapnel. And who else? And then we finally open up the door. We get Garland out of there. Kevin, KG. And so his head was slumped over. He was foaming from the mouth. His eyes were rolled back. I really didn't think he was going to make it. And we needed to get him the fuck out of there. But no medevacs is going to land. It's too hot there. So at that point, the enemy, because the other two vehicles, that when they come back, they were firing at them from the flank, and we finally ran them off. Okay. So then...
how long did that last, do you think?
It wasn't long. It was short. Now, I'll give you Sergeant Hicks's... I didn't know this till not long ago. So I'm giving you my perspective. And it was a very short but intense. So what Sergeant Hickson said...
What's short?
It's hard to tell time.
5 minutes?
May not even been that long.
Wow.
Here's what Sergeant Hickson said, because it was a hit and run. Sergeant Hickson was on his 3rd infantry tour. Sergeant Hickson did 2 infantry tours in Iraq. Like one of them was during the surge. He had 27 months of combat before Afghanistan, part of it during the surge. And he said that was the shortest, most intense firefight he's ever been in. So what happened, I remember Sergeant Hicks was massively concussed. Kevin was just eyes rolled back, hitting the head with an RPG. I didn't think he'd make it. Hicks was walking around, and he was trying to lead, but his thoughts were a day late and a dollar short. He couldn't quite put it together. And so he was concussed, blank look, shrapnel, bleeding. And so he comes, and he's like trying to spin up some guys he was pissed off to. And he was like, come on, man, let's rally up a group and go assault those cornfields and get those motherfuckers. And I'm like, Sergeant Hicks, I'm like, just chill, brother. I said, listen, man. I said, I remember he tried to like cut a stretcher down, and I'm like, it's okay, Sergeant. You don't need that. I said, listen. He was like, well, let's go back in there. And he was telling another sergeant, I believe it was Sergeant Shekels from 2nd Platoon Sergeant. He's like, fuck that. Let's go in there. And I was like, Sergeant, I said, listen, man, why don't you just let us fix you up and just chill, man. Just chill. We'll worry about that later. We got to get him the fuck out of here, man. Doc Lindley was working on Kevin. And so we finally got those vehicles, the hit vehicle fired up, and we go hauling ass as fast as we could back to where we just came from to Cop Margall. Now, let me give you so Hicks's perspective, all I was seeing was rockets going to a vehicle. Now, Sergeant Hicks's perspective that I recently learned, so he's sitting in their shotgun, everybody in the vehicle's bleeding, wounded, and fucked up. The gunner fell down, and he had taken all the shrapnel, the guy hitting the head, and from his perspective, where he was sitting, he knew everybody was fucked up. He got the gunner. He's like, Gunner, get back up there and start shooting. They were able to. They actually
had to hoist him back up.
Yeah, they had to hoist Gus back in there so he could. And he starts he's lobbing them grenades back, and then Sergeant Hickson looked out the window and he could see them running around inside the cornfields. They had us outnumbered. He seen those guys running around inside the cornfields, and he started thinking to himself, "Oh fuck, man! They were within 30 meters. They were within hand grenade range." The Mark 19 has to shoot a certain distance to deploy, obviously, because if say you have somehow it hits inside the turret or bounces back in the vehicle, it won't deploy, right? So it has to go a few meters, however, to deploy. These guys were within 30 meters and they were within hand grenade range. And so he was sitting there, he's fucked up, he's looking around, everybody in there's fucked up, and he, in his head, he gave the guys like an encouragement speech. He was like, hey guys, we're going to be all right. Something to the effect of, listen, man, just keep doing what you're doing. We're going to be fine. We're going to get out of this. And, but in his head, he was like, man, we are fucked. Like, we are so fucked, man. You know, he could see them running around, and he thought he was going to get overrun. And so what's not in there, because I didn't know till later, as an NCO, he kept a pistol strapped to him. So basically, he unstrapped his pistol, he sat it in his lap, and told himself, if we get overrun, and then I'll let you understand what that means. And that haunts him to this day. Basically, he's sitting there wounded with a pistol on his lap saying, if we get overrun, you don't want to get captured by these guys. So eventually, our vehicle, we weren't hit with anything. We went into a blocking position and, helped them fight those guys off. Like Sergeant Stan ordered Joey to move in a position to where we could help block them, fight those guys off. The other two vehicles came, and then by that time, we ran them off. But Sergeant Hickson thought they were going to get overrun. 30 meters away is how far these guys were away from us. And so we get the vehicles cranked up, and we haul ass back to Margot. We set up a perimeter at the bottom of the hill, and I just remember the couple guys, one of them being second platoon's medic, moping back up the hill like, oh, fuck, man, got to stay here, They're supposed to be getting on the Freedom Bird.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? They're supposed to be getting on the Freedom Bird. The medevac helicopter flies in, and I can see Sergeant Hicks, Gus, everybody, they're kind of limping to the bird, and then they're carrying, I believe it was KG, they carry him on there, and then they flew off, and he did make it. I don't want to speak to it for him. I'm not sure what the extent of his injuries are, but the word got back to us that he's missing a significant amount of vision and hearing, but he did live. But a significant amount of vision and hearing gone. So as we set up the perimeter and the medevac takes off, this civilian a local national little car comes hauling ass to our position. And I just remember he's frantically waving a white flag out of his vehicle. And so we see him waving his white flag. So we're like, yeah, come on in. So the guy gets to where we're set up and parks, and he walks around, opens up his passenger door, reaches in there and grabs this kid, about a 7 or 8 year old boy, and starts walking the kid. The kid was dead. He starts walking his dead son towards us. I could see the man was crying. He was crying, walking towards us with his dead kid. And he gets to the middle of the position, and he kind of kneels before Manny Fresh and Sergeant Stan. And the medic examined him, and he had a small arms wound. So he wasn't wounded the only thing that fired in our convoy were 50 cal rounds that are like the size of a hot dog, and Mark 19 grenades that are like big as a fucking coffee cup. So Sergeant Stan and Manny Fresh were trying to, tell the man that, he couldn't have been shot by us. He had to have been shot. He was shot by one of your guys, or not your guy. He was shot by the Taliban because he has a small arms wound. And even though it's one less burden to carry, we knew we didn't kill him, but nothing wipes the thought of a dead kid away. And that image just burns in my head. I can see that dead kid right now. I can see him there I can see that dead kid laying in his dad's arms. But it wasn't us. Now, the medic seems to believe, because the medics deal with all the shit, he seems to believe that the Taliban was purposely shooting kids because there were some other dead kids that medic had to examine. And he believes they may have been shooting these kids to sow anti-American sentiment. Okay? And so, excuse me. So when there's obviously nothing going to be done about it, I can still see it. The man just kind of walks back to his car, jumps in there, and takes off. And who knows what become of him? Was he an enemy from now on? Who knows? You know. And so then we have to drive back to Margot or to Fob Boris, and somebody asked me, like, Bruce, will you gun the hit vehicle? And I'm like, sure, I'd be honored to. You know, I was honored to do it. And so I climbed up into the Mark 19 was damaged. It couldn't be used. I set up a squad automatic weapon up in there. And the back of that vehicle was just filled with blood, man. I mean, all of their gear was still in there. All of the packs and racks and everything was just blood everywhere. There was blood everywhere inside that vehicle. And so we drove back through the scene of the ambush, got back to Fob Boris, and then people who weren't on that mission showed up to help clean. There was all kinds of brass links, ammo links, brass, all just filled in that vehicle. You know, these vehicles, cleaning them out. And
was that a quiet ride back?
Yeah, it was quiet, but I just had a proud. I knew I wanted to do that. I felt proud to be, as shitty as that situation was, I actually felt good to be up there. Okay. So that's like time number 2. Why did we get all those people wounded? To look for a deserter, to give somebody a piss test, and to get 2 people off to R&R. Does that sound like a noble, you know? And that's why a lot of these guys are bitter. So then, and I'll make this skip.
This is the beginning of when things really went to hell.
Right. And it's probably around September. Okay. So then, years later, I'd been out of the Army for like 5 years. You know how I told you we never had cameras, no document.
Yep.
So 5 years later, I'm civilian out of the Army. Or not from there. Like I've been out of the Army 5 years. Sergeant Stan sends me this YouTube video, and it was actually a Haji video of that firefight. You see, this guy's like way off on the opposite side of the wadi, and he's filming the 2 vehicles, and you can see the RPGs going into the vehicle, and I'm like, holy shit! I could see the vehicle I was sitting in. This was on YouTube. Now YouTube finally took it down.
That must have been surreal.
Yeah, and so I'm watching this video. And this is at a time that where I wasn't doing so well, and the videographer, you could just hear him going, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, and then he was getting real excited, and his voice was just real high. It's like Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, and then at one point it's like they doctored it. Like at the first it said U.S. Cougar versus Mujahideen, and it showed the RPGs going into it, and then it showed them going in slow motion. It was like they would show each hit in slow motion, you know, like just really playing it up. And then at the end of the video, it said, at the bottom, it said like in some shitty English, like 4 Americans were killed by the Mujahideen. They weren't killed, but that was their propaganda video. And that one really just fucked me for a while, seeing that. It just kind of stuck in my craw, man. Knowing that, yeah, somebody was watching us the whole. And now, I
have a question. How did that change you after? I mean, did that event really
that's what made it real, so that's when we knew, when we went down Margall, something was going to happen. When we drove down Route Volkswagen, something was going down. And at this point, if you want to, because I wanted to read a passage, because I'll go through one more. And then I'll give you, that'll answer this question. That'll give you this. Yes, it did change me at that point in the deployment, you know. So here we are, 3 days after that, just 3 days after that, we get a mission. At this point, Sergeant Hicks, All those guys that were wounded, they're no longer with the platoon. Gus and Sergeant Hicks eventually got patched up and made it back, so they stayed in the fight. KG, Jordy, I can't. Maybe somebody else. They had to go home. Their shit was too severe.
Yeah.
So 3 days later, hey guys, we got a mission. The piss test ambush. This is when we specifically had to drive down the same exact route that we just got hit on to drive out to the outpost.
The same outpost.
Right. To give 2nd Platoon a piss test because they got hip to their drug problem or something. So we got to take some meat gazer from fobbit. Fobbit was people that never went outside. The slang term for people that never went outside the wire, a fobbit. We had to take some guy. We had to drive some guy down the same route to give 2nd Platoon a piss test. Okay, we drive to Margall. We get there safe, and the meat gazer goes up the hill, does his thing. He comes back. We crank up and we leave. Now this time we're on the move, which is better. So I'm sitting at this point. I'm a dismount. I'm just sitting in the back of the vehicle, sitting back there with Rusty and Smitty. And Dottie, a friend of mine, he was up in the gun turret. He was gunning, I believe it was a 240. So as we're driving back to Fob Boris, all of a sudden the RPGs start coming out the cornfields. But we were moving this time. And there they go. They're just popping off, landing everywhere. The gunners started, it's called suppressive fire, man. It might sound kind of shitty to some people, but when you're a machine gunner up in the gun and you start taking fire, you just start firing back, searching and traversing up, left, right, up and down. You're either trying to get their heads down, make them go away, or kill them. Hey, fuck them at this point.
Yep.
So Dottie starts rocking that machine gun. And
I want to be clear. If you're sitting inside the MRAP in the back, you're not seeing anything.
You can look through a window. Yeah.
Oh, there is a window there.
There's kind of a long one on the side and there's one out the back.
So you can see.
Yeah,
you have some perspective.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you can see.
Okay.
So Dottie's rocking the machine gun, and then all of a sudden, boom, an RPG hits our vehicle up in the turret, it hits the fucking turret, and Dottie just falls down into the fucking vehicle. And we thought, oh, shit. And somebody's always got to be up in that gun. And Dottie just took a fucking direct hit. So he falls down in the turret, and a couple of us grab him like somebody's going to try to give him medical attention while somebody else pops up in that turret to keep the gun going. But Dottie, somehow that motherfucker, he just somehow rose back up like how when the Undertaker just rises up. He just fucking rises up, gets behind that machine gun and starts laying it down. And the whole ride at this point, we're not too far from Boris. The whole ride is all the guns are opened up, all directions. And so we get back to damn Boris. We get out of the vehicle, and Stan, I'm sorry. He said GD all the time, man. Sergeant Stan was sitting shotgun, squad leader. He gets out and he looked, the damn turret was just warped and damaged. I think I sent you a picture. And he was like, God damn it, you're a lucky motherfucker, Dottie. Dottie, that RPG hit into the turret and it didn't even give him a concussion.
Wow.
He had no shrapnel, no concussion. He was, I don't know if it was a half dud, whatever, but it did hit, exploded, and it just blew the glass out the turret, warped it, and he didn't have a scratch on him. So those were the three events. Now, if you don't mind, I wanted to read.
Go ahead.
And then you can go on. So I just want to read a passage to answer your question. Let me at the page. At this point in time, this is what I'm feeling. So the last paragraph of the chapter, the platoon was down 7 men, and we didn't have the required manpower to roll outside wire. We needed a rotation of force protection. It was at this point I grew disillusioned with the war effort. In a 3-day span, we'd gotten 7 men wounded while trying to chauffeur soldiers to R&R, search for a deserter, and administer a piss test. We were getting picked apart by guerrillas from the Stone Age. I didn't believe these fighters had the means, ability, nor desire to do damage inside my own homeland. They fought us because we were in their backyard. It was becoming a turd sandwich. I made up my mind that I was doing this for the men around me, not the bullshit greater good.
Was that a turning point for you?
Yeah, most definitely, because that passage says it all, man. We're getting fucked up for stupid shit. It's not because we're kicking in some door to snatch some bad guy, terrorist. It's because we're doing that bullshit. And it's almost making my skin crawl now. I mean, I hate to, it's a bad feeling. And that's why a lot of us, come back so salty, man. So then at that point, we didn't have enough, so we started doing more force protection.
What do you mean by that, force protection?
Just guard duty on the base,
okay.
The guard with the Afghans.
Oh, because you guys couldn't go outside the wire.
We didn't have enough, too many guys, until we got some guys back.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then doing some guard duty, and then we also did these things called air assault missions, to where we was like a supplement, like Captain Mack, the company commander, and we would go along with his headquarters guys, and this is where we get to what I call Special Forces cleanup missions.
Are you saying you're going in a bird then?
So
for these things?
Yeah, these things were like air assaults. We'd get woke up 2 or 3 in the morning, and we always had our shit ready. We could be gone within 10 minutes. Stan made sure we had our bags packed, and we would just go meet on the airfield in the dark. Captain Mack would be with us with his guys, and we were like a supplement. And they would just take, basically, the helicopter, we wouldn't even know where we was going. What would happen was the Special Forces dudes, I call them the Longbeards, because they had long beards. The Longbeards would go on a mission, like their missions had purpose, right? Their missions had purpose. They didn't do shit and, like, they have a target, we're going to go get it. They're not just riding around doing stupid shit waiting to get shot at.
Yeah. So
they would go raid a village, kill or take whoever captured, and they immediately would leave. They didn't stick around. And so an infantry unit like mine, we would land in the helicopter. We would get off. The Special Forces dudes would immediately get on the helicopter and leave. They would have some
Would they go on the same bird you landed in?
Yeah.
And then they would bring another bird to get you out? Extricate
right.
you guys? Okay.
Yeah. So, and sometimes, one time I counted like 15 people tied up and duct tape around their fucking head. Not even just had them eyes covered with duct tape, tied up, and just marching them on the bird. And so at that point, we would be tasked with, I call it Special Forces cleanup. I'm not even sure what the real term
Would they even tell you anything? Or you just knew that's what you were going to do?
What we would do is, what would happen is we would land, set up a perimeter, and Captain Mack would find like the village elder and just come up. Basically, it was like, what do we do with these dead bodies? The Special Forces dude like slaughtered some shit. Now here we are on the ground. What do we do with these dead bodies? Some of these dead bodies would be kids. Some were enemies. Some may not have been. Some of it was collateral damage. And this is kind of one funny story. So you asked about once the HIDES device. They gave me this thing called the HIDES device. Somehow they gave it to me in the platoon. And I had to get biometrics. Basically, it was somehow a little device. I can't explain it. And it would snap a picture of their eyeballs. You could put their finger on it, get a fingerprint. Now, if you snapped a picture of their eyeball, if they were in the system, it would just pull it like, this is so-and-so. And
it would tell you immediately.
Yeah. Wow. And if they weren't in the system, I would punch in some information, like get his name, his name, whatever, put his information in there. And we're just storing information. So in one of these missions, the Longbeards raided the village, killed some people. We set up a perimeter around it, and then Captain Mack had me. He had just a line of Afghans. They're just squatting like they do, and I'm just one by one doing that, getting their information. And then when I was done, Manny Fresh was like, "All right, go ahead and go link up with your squad." And we weren't really in a hurry, so I walk into this house, this empty house. Second platoon guys are up on the roof. It's like a deck, big deck, and they're up on the roof, stands looking over the neighborhood. So I'm in this house by myself, and I decided to give myself a little tour, So I walked in, I'm just looking at the decor and all this shit, and I walk in there and I see these teapots and shit, and I start stuffing them in my pack. And I seen some Haji scarf, and I stuff it in the pack. And I look around, and then there's pictures. I'm looking at, there's like family photos and shit inside the mud hut. And then I thought better. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put this shit back. So I put it back. And so I start walking in each room, looking around. And then all of a sudden, I walk in this room, and there's this fucking just dead dude. Nobody knew he was there. Dude just fucking spread out with his eyes open, eyes wide open, just laying there like this, just like he gut shot. And I remember I come in there, and I'm like, and I look at him for a second. Here's what's funny, and I've heard other people do this too. Like, when I first saw this guy, it's a weird thought, man. When I first looked at it, I thought it was fake. I thought it was like, this is like some replica that they practice medical on. I don't know why I thought that, but what's weird about it, I'm like like crime series type junkie.
You like crime junkie stuff?
And so I've watched a lot of these things, and when like some detective, I've heard in interviews a detective, when they see like a dead body for the first time, that up close, they think it's fake. I've heard this more than one time. I've heard several times, like when somebody, civilian or whoever, rolls up on a dead body, they think it was fake. And I don't know why. I looked at it, I thought, this is fake. And then I thought, no, it ain't. Was
this your first one that you saw there?
Up close like that.
Yeah.
Like I walked in the room just by myself.
Yeah.
And so then I know, so I walk up on the roof, and I'm like, Sergeant Stan. I'm like, hey, man, come here, man. You got to see this shit. And he's like, what, Bruce? I'm like, seriously, man, come here. I said, you got to see this shit. Follow me. And he follows me down the stairwell, and we walk in the room, and he's like, God damn, they shot the fuck out of this dude. And so we just got to stare at it. And I remember thinking to myself, well, is he gone to Allah? Has he got those 72 virgins or whatever the fuck? And so he walks out there and gets Captain Mac. Captain Mac walks in the room, and he's like, hey, Bruce, why don't you try getting biometrics from him? So I straddle over the guy with the Hides device, and remember Sergeant Fink's forcing his eyes open a little wider, and I'm trying to get pictures.
Did it work?
Yeah, it did. And then I remember taking his dead-ass hand and doing each finger, fucking. And then I remember while I was straddled over the guy, I heard Sergeant Fink, he pulls out his personal camera, digital camera, and he's like, I just remember him whispering, he goes, Bruce. He goes, turn around, stick your thumb out. And I'm just big, and he just snaps a pic, and I'm just straddled over that dude, but anyway, that's the kind of, nobody needs, I don't want to be on CNN,
Yeah.
But, so then, after that, we get our guys back. And this is when it amps up even more. So, Margall, remember the most dangerous place in our area of operation? The order comes to tear it down, just like we did Malakshade.
Wow.
So
and they're assigning you to do that again?
Well, 2nd Platoon was already out there, and they were like, kind of how like we stayed at Malakshade. 2nd Platoon was mainly doing it because they lived there at the time. They were there. And us and Dog Platoon drove out there for a few days, rotating, helping 2nd Platoon. And so they tear down Margall just like Malakshade.
And they when they tell you to tear it down, they don't give you any reason. It's just you tear it down.
Right. And we were all happy about this, man. We're like,
yeah, this place sucks.
This place is the worst.
Yeah.
And we won't have to fuck with it no more. And that's what they told us. They told us, we're going to tear it down and we'll never come back. That's what they told us.
Okay.
So we tear this place down to a complete mound of dirt. Now, what they had at Margall, they had up on the hill was a combat outpost, and at the bottom, like almost like target practice written on it, there was these brittle kind of almost, I don't know, kind of concrete-like buildings, 2 or 3 little buildings. Like they were building, it was a half-built Afghan compound where the Afghans were supposed to occupy it. It had had 4 towers, And these buildings were brittle as fuck. They weren't reinforced.
Yeah.
If a mortar landed, hit the top, it'd blow everything in there.
Yeah.
And so, but we were tearing down the cop, vacating, and never coming back. So when the teardown was almost complete, so an Apache helicopter flew in and started just launching fucking missiles into the side of a mountain in the distance. And then we're all like, fuck yeah, man, get them. Send them to fucking Allah. And we're out there dirty. At this point, we may have been there a couple weeks. And at this point, that was the day we were fucking leaving. We were black on food and water. We were out of food and water.
Had you been camping there the whole time?
Right.
Oh.
And so at this point, it's a mound of dirt. And then all of a sudden, the Apache pilot radios Lieutenant Troutman. He was our second lieutenant, which I loved him. He was a great officer, highly professional. He was one of the very few that cared about his men over his career. And he was a prior enlisted, so he had been a private and a sergeant once. So he had marched in the enlisted man's boots.
What was his name?
I call him Troutman, but
Okay.
I don't want to give his real
Yeah.
name because he's actually still in the Army.
Oh.
And he's a pretty high-ranking dude now,
Yeah.
from what I understand.
Yeah.
So, but we called prior enlisted in the Marines Mustang. So he was a Mustang. He cared about us more than his guys. So the helicopter pilot radios to him saying, yeah, I just destroyed a recoilless rifle in like 4 rounds. Now, I guess a recoilless rifle, it's a very deadly fucking weapon. It could, from what I understand, it could blow right through an MRAP. And it requires a small team to operate it, big, heavy fucking thing. And I guess it was very rare in the AO, the area of operation. There wasn't many there, if there was. So I don't know too much, but so he radios to destroy this recoilless rifle. And so, but the company hears it, the company at Fob Boris, and all of a sudden the executive officer's on the horn saying, he radios Lieutenant Troutman at the time, and he was like, y'all need to walk up there and recover that recoilless rifle. Now, a lot of lieutenants would have probably just, okay. But, so then Troutman shoots back. The recoilless rifle is destroyed. The pilot said it's unusable. It's unusable. And he was like, why would we do that? And he was like, listen, you have your orders. Go up there and get the thing. And so, and he was like, let me remind you, we're black on food and water, It was so.
Yeah.
And so then he switched his frequency and radios to pilot, and he says, can you do another, he asked, can you do another flyover and confirm that this thing is destroyed? So the pilot did us a solid. He flew right back over it. Yes, I can confirm this thing will never be used again. And so Troutman switches to frequency, and he was like, listen, I just talked to the pilot. He said that it's completely destroyed and unusable. I don't give a fuck. Get up there. You got your orders. You better get moving. And so a group of guys actually had to walk up there. The only reason that I can surmise is to get a fucking trophy for some commander, like some fucking colonel on fucking Bagram. You're risking people's lives to gather a fucking war trophy for some officer. So a group of guys walked up there, but what was funny, we had EOD guys do it at this point during this teardown. So they walk up there with the EOD guys and just blow that place blow it to bits in place, leave nothing. And then so we drive back to Boris, and I'm sure Troutman had to go in there and explain that the thing was
it was just gone.
Yeah, it was just gone. But that's all they wanted was a trophy, man.
Insane.
And so then all right, so these BDA missions that we're setting patterns on. So the last one, I'll get to this story in the November 4th. So remember how we leave Margall. We've got it torn
down. Yep.
The Afghans that are supposed to man the little compound, they flee the area. Zip, they're gone. And guess what? It was only like 3 days later. 3 days when we think that's nothing but a memory. 3 days later, Troutman spins up the platoon. Hey guys, pack your shit. We're going back to Margall. So we drive back to Margall, just to man a bare piece of dirt. We split the platoon in half. 2 MRAPs drove up the hill and just parked 180 from each other, facing opposite directions. We had about 9 dudes up there. So basically, about 9 or 10 guys was on top of the hill. The other part of the rest of the platoon was down, occupying the brittle fucking buildings. And so for the last however many months, 4 or 5, whatever months, this kicked off. Remember, there's 3 infantry platoons. 3rd platoon, us, 2nd platoon, and dog platoon. So we got three infantry platoons. We did 2-week rotations.
After they tore down all the infrastructure.
Right.
That's insane.
So why in the fuck did we tear it down? Why would we tear... Listen, man, it wasn't... I'm not saying this much. Why would you tear down a perfectly good outpost that at least has bunkers, that offers some type of protection, just to drive back out there 3 days later to occupy a bare piece of fucking dirt?
Especially the hottest... The area that gets so much fire in that region.
The worst. That later became the most attacked base in all of Afghanistan. And at this point, when that reporter did that report, it was all built back up again.
Crazy.
So we're manning a bare piece. Why did we tear it down? It's almost, we're just fucking pawns that these officers play with, man. Some dude 40 miles away on Bagram, or however maybe 100, I don't know, is making decisions that we're just eating shit on, bro.
It's terrible.
I mean, and so at this point, you really start thinking, put yourself, you're there several months. So the first time we packed our shit, first we expected we were only going to be out there 3 days. And that turned out, so we packed a 3-day bag. And I was up on top of the mountain, and we think we're only going to be there 3 days, and it ended up being 2 weeks. And I remember after the 3rd day, I was in a Vic. It was me, Frankie, like Brandon and Dottie, the 4 of us. And we would just do like 4-hour, we'd do a 4-hour guard shift in the turret, one of us, and then 12 hours off. And we would sleep in the dirt around the vehicle. Somebody later on built some like fucking tent like little thing beside it. And so I remember after the 3rd day came and went, we're still there. And so every afternoon we would listen. Lieutenant Troutman would call the FOB to ask for a situational report. And every time, they shot back, oh, we have no new information. It was like a kick in the balls each day. And so you start getting delusional. Like, I remember I'm sitting there talking to Dottie, and I'm like, why would we tear the place down to come back like this? I'm like, are they trying to get us killed out here? It's like they're fucking trying to get us killed out here, man. That's the only thing I could think about. And kind of what's funny is every night after the Troutman would call and they'd say no new information, and we'll over here another day. One night I just randomly blurted out, "One more night," that old Phil Collins song. And when you're bored, man, you ain't got no fucking electronics or nothing. You're just sleeping on dirt with no entertainment. I just remember Dottie, Frankie, Brent. For 2 weeks just kept fucking randomly, "One more night." So that was like the Phil Collins song, was like the motto of the trip, man. And then at the end of 2 weeks, Dog Platoon drove out there and relieved us. And that kicked off 2-week rotations at Margall, the place we just tore down. So it was Halloween. The only reason I know that I remember this was, if this would have happened any other day, I would not remember the date. But I remember it was Halloween. It was on a Saturday. We're going to drive back to FOB Boris. And at this point, we're excited. We're not even, we're so excited just to get back and take a shower and do shit. I had it in my mind, I'm going to watch some college football, man. Because, you're half the world away. Like, college football played midnight Saturday night till 5, 6 a.m. Sunday morning. Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to get back. I'm going to fucking eat something in the chow hall, take a shower, and watch some college football, man. Because they kept the chow hall, they just left it open 24/7. It wasn't much to it, but so you could go in there and grab a near beer or an ice cream or some shit. So and we're just fucking excited, man. And I'm the gunner. I'm up in the gun behind a 240, and we're driving down Volkswagen. And I remember Brandon, he like somehow taped his ear. When you're the gunner, you got a headset like this, and you're talking, and you can communicate with everybody in the vehicle. And somehow Brandon rigged it, his little MP3. I guess there was an electronic somebody had. He rigged his MP3 to where we could listen to music on the way back. And anytime somebody spoke, the music would cut out so you could still communicate. And I remember we was listening to Billy Idol, Rebel Yell, and fucking Alanis Morissette, Ironic. Old Stu was back there. And we were just rocking out, dude. We're driving down Volkswagen, and I'm up in the turret just fucking in the midnight hour. I was pumping my fist like Billy Idol, sneering my lip. So we were all just singing, screaming, in the midnight hour. The Rebel Yell. We were singing the Rebel Yell, dude. And then, just out of the blue, just boom, that motherfucker hit an IED, man. And I mean, one second I'm rocking out to Billy Idol, and then boom, vehicle hits an IED. And I just fell out into the damn turret. There's a strap, you're kind of sitting on a strap. And I just fell in there, and just black smoke just fluttering up through there, man. And I mean, it knocked the piss out of me. Definitely concussed on this one. It knocked the piss out of me. I was concussed. Black smoke's fluttering up. And it's almost like, it's kind of like Doc mentioned this. Like, one thing, Saving Private Ryan got it right. Like, when they're on the beachhead and something explodes and Tom Hanks, everything just kind of goes like slow motion, womp, womp.
Yeah.
The people who were screaming, just womp, womp. That's what I'm just feeling, man. And
like you're underwater, kind
something,
of.
Man. Yeah. It's just the weirdest. When things happen, you can't go back and replay. And then I always kind of think, but I just remember womp, womp. And
Is this dark?
Oh yes, the black smoke.
No, I mean, is it night when you're doing this? It's daytime.
Daylight.
Okay.
And so what I did, I did the same thing when I was the rollover crash. I reached down and to feel my legs, and I'm like, my leg, they're still there. I'm good. And then Stu had an M14 Fire 7.62, so he popped out the top hatch of this vehicle and he started just firing fucking M14 out there. And so then I finally just shook my head, got my shit together, and I just climbed back up in that. The damn turret was warped and the damn machine gun was broke loose from the mount. But I swung the machine gun to my left where it was firing, and I just started fucking rocking the machine gun, baby. I let it loose. And at this point, I didn't give a fuck, man. I mean, I was going to kill everything that moved out there. Just like Stu said, just shooting at fucking movement.
Were you seeing anything?
I don't think I seen anything specifically in front of us at that one.
Yeah.
But at this point, I was just lost my head. I just didn't give a fuck. I mean,
was that another one where it was cornfields?
This was more of an open area at that.
Okay.
It was still cornfields.
Yeah.
It seemed like kind of an open field at this particular spot.
Yeah.
From what I remember. And like I said, it's nothing nefarious. It's what you taught, search and traverse. And I was searching and traversing the machine gun. And at this point, this was we done been getting picked apart and fucked up this whole time. Now is my time behind the machine gun, and I'm just going to let it fucking rip, man. I mean, I'm just letting it go. I think that Billy Idol was fucking still playing, dude. Somehow, I fired a machine gun, the Billy Idol's fucking playing, and just letting it rip. And I can just remember Lieutenant Troutman was in the vehicle behind us, and he was like, I could hear him on the radio going, make sure you have positive ID, positive identification. Make sure you have positive ID of targets. Nothing against my, and that's right. That's the right thing. Nothing against my beloved lieutenant, but I just got my ass blown up, man. Fuck this, man. I'm giving it back. And so, and the Duke, he was a team leader. The Duke was just feeding me ammo cans, man. And I'd fire 100 rounds and I'd reload that thing. And from what I remember, I fired about 400 rounds before they called a ceasefire. But I'd had enough, man. I was fed up with this bullshit. I'm killing everything, if I could. And so then I remember Brandon, after the ceasefire, they dismount, and it was a huge fucking crater that blown.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember Sergeant Donald with the squad leader. He's like, man, that crater's huge, man. And so, and then
Was it vehicle drivable after that?
yeah, that's what's crazy.
Wow.
It was almost better to get blown up by that than an RPG. It took the blast, big ass crater, and so then it was serviceable. And so, okay, we're good. We can, everybody's good. We can drive back. And I remember Frankie, a team leader, and Brandon was driving. We start talking, getting our story together in case there's a political correct army. And Brandon's like, some dude just took off running after the blast. And then Frankie just nodded in agreement. But nobody asked no questions.
Yeah.
And then some Apaches flew in. This is about 8 months in, and this is Halloween. So these Apaches swooped in, and they gave us an escort for the rest of the ride back to Fob Boris. And
That's the first time that had happened for you.
me personally, IED. And so, not the first, but, me personally hit
Yeah.
but several of them before that. So I just remember Frankie saying, or I just remember blurting out, like, man, this is the first time Apaches have ever escorted us anywhere, 8 months in country. And Frankie was like, yeah, in Iraq, we pretty much had an Apache escort everywhere we went. That's where the resources were. And
Yeah.
so then we finished. We get back to Fob Boris, and this guy called Clover, good old boy from Kentucky. I get out the vehicle, and I'm thinking, gonna take a shower, watch football, and I was kind of glowing. I was actually feeling a rush, man. I finally got some scunion on these fuckers. I was feeling a rush. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, I believe it.
You fucking firing a machine gun. And so Clover heard you had a rough day, man, and you got something that'll make it all good. He pulls out this big ass bag of hashish, and we went off to his place where he had away from everything, and we got smoked out off that good Afghan hashish, man. That shit was fire. And high as a kite. And then that's when I told him, I said, hey, Sergeant Clover, let's go to the chow hall and eat some ice cream and watch some football. And he was like, yeah, man, let's do it. We were high as a kite. And it's around midnight-ish, somewhere around midnight. And keep in mind, the biggest thing on that fob was the captain and the first sergeant, the company commander, the company first sergeant. And we was even though it was a fob, we were pretty isolated for what it was. Not like Malik Shade, but for what that was, we still pretty isolated. And so me and me and Clover, high as a fucking kite, walking that chow hall, and we had the munchies, man. You get the munchies, and we was just eating candy bars and drinking near beers. And in the chow hall, there was 2 small rooms in there that had a TV in it, and if you changed the TV in one room, the other one changes also. So I grabbed the remote to put it on college football. So it was on CNN. So I switched it from CNN. We didn't get many channels, man. I switched it from CNN to ESPN. And then as soon as I did that, these footsteps come from the other room, and I hear Bruce. And I turn around, yes, Sergeant Major. It's the command Sergeant Major. And I immediately stood at parade rest. And he steps in front of me and he goes, I heard you had a rough day, son. And I said, it's all good, Sergeant Major. And he goes, well, you stood back up and fired back on their asses. You did good, son. And then he patted me on the shoulder and walked out of there. And then I just turn around and look at Greenleaf. I'm like, dude, man, what the fuck? I said, did you know he was going to be here? And he's like, no, man, I didn't know he was going to be here. He must have just came in unannounced, And we were high as a kite, man. And that's just when I think of Halloween, man. I think about that IED and smoking that hashish and talking to the command sergeant major. He was the battalion sergeant major. So that was on Halloween. So on November the 4th is where it even...
This is all stacking up, isn't it?
I know this shit's amped up, but it was the natural timeline of this deployment. It just it amped up, man. So the November the 4th, we're sitting on the Fob Boris, and the base starts getting rocketed. And we knew what time it is, BDA time. And at this point, we just could not stand those missions because we knew they were setting traps. Now, before that, I'll back up. A couple days before the 4th of November, the Special Forces, the Longbeards, Green Berets, they rolled over a vehicle on a mission. So we drove out there with the big wrecker to snatch it up and get them back rolling again. And we got there, and Stu and I were kind of just standing guard off to the side, and this Longbeard walks up to us. You know, I don't know his rank. Dude could be a colonel, could be anything.
Yeah.
And he was like, I hear you guys do a lot of BDA missions. And I said, yes, sir, we do. And he goes, well, y'all need to be more careful doing those. Y'all need to be careful. And I asked him, I said, sir, don't you think doing a BDA mission every time we take rockets sets a pattern? And he goes, that's what I'm getting at, son. He said, the enemy's starting to set traps. They're booby trapping the point of origin, the poo site. They're booby trapping those, and they're setting up ambushes. And he told us that we had a guy get killed on one of those, and a guy lost his leg. And he said, just be careful doing the BDA. He just implored it. And I said, yes, sir. And then he just went off. And so, and then I just really felt eerie. This Special Forces dude, if it can fuck them up, what do you think he's going to do to us, man?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we're sitting there on November 4th. Base start taking rockets. We know what time it is. And they come over to the cans to spin us up to, hey, guys, get your shit together. We're doing a BDA. And we were driving to this place called Mangrate. And they knew the way they set this ambush up, they knew they were going to drag us in the worst place we could possibly be in. We had to drive down this narrow-ass road, hills on both sides. One side was rows of houses and culottes, and the other side was just woods, and a ton of choke points. A choke point, you just have to narrow in.
Right.
It's almost like going through a tunnel, and you can't really see what's going on the other side. Just narrows the patrol in, and it basically diminishes a lot of your combat power when you're going through these choke points.
Yeah.
And they had us on the worst route possible because they knew we were coming out. And drive out there. We had a 4-vehicle convoy. I was the 4th vehicle, and my machine gun faced backwards. Behind me were a couple pickup trucks with A&A guys.
Yeah.
And when I was doing that, I had a vision of they were just all behind us. But now I know they had a couple A&A vehicles infused in the platoon, like 2 of our vehicles, 2 or 3 of theirs, and then 2 of ours. So they had us stretched out, and my 4th vehicle was a long way from that first one. Nobody wanted it done that way, but it's like we want these Afghans to feel like they're part of the team.
Yeah.
That it's their country, man.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice to have our convoy together. So we drive out there, get through a choke point, and the lead vehicle, boom, hits an IED. And I believe Sergeant Donald and the Duke, was in that vehicle. And that IED was to signal the attack. That was the enemy signal. And as soon as that IED went off, just simultaneously, boom, RPG right in the door of the 2nd vehicle. And that was the vehicle Julian was driving. Julian was driving that vehicle, and Lieutenant Troutman was sitting shotgun as the commander. And that RPG blew through, and I didn't know it at the time. It instantly killed Julian, and it peppered the lieutenant with shrapnel, and the gunner got some. And they were fucked up. The lieutenant was severely wounded, and Julian was dead. And the RPG somehow went inside and exploded from the inside out. His body was in pieces inside of his skin. So at this point, B being the 4th, now I don't know the severity. I'm way away from.
Right.
I'm the last vehicle. I'm gunning a 240 automatic machine gun, and I just get down on it, and I just started letting it fucking rip. Hey, it's my time again. Like I said before, they done picked at us. This is my time. And like I've mentioned before, Yeah, I always loved being the gunner in the vehicle. I mean, you're not lugging it around, but because if something happens in the convoy, you're the one shooting back. You don't have to be at somebody else's mercy. You're the one. You're the one. And as you move up in the infantry, that gets taken away. So when it's your time to shine, let it shine, baby. And because like Stan used to say as the squad leader, he goes, "You guys are the shooters, and I direct the fight," right? And driving through these villages, man, sometimes like before that, I'd be up in that gun, I'd have a damn cigarette dangling from my mouth, and I just imagine myself like my favorite gangster rapper, old 8 Ball and MJG, just riding through the hood with my homies getting fucked up. One of them, steps at me, I'm gonna blast his fucking ass. And so once something goes boom, you got free reign, suppressive fire. And so I started firing that damn machine gun. And that obviously makes you a target. Like any movie you watch, whether it's World War II or whatever, you got to take out the machine gun because he's doing all the damage. You got to take out that machine gun nest, and I was the machine gun nest. And there were bullets that were just pinging inside the vehicle. I had one round, and I didn't realize it. It hit inside the turret and ricocheted around me. I felt it, but it didn't. It missed me, and it ricocheted around the turret, and it tore down the back of my armor, and it just scratched right down the back. I didn't realize it at the time till after the firefight. I took off my vest, and I'm like, holy shit! It didn't even penetrate the plate. It just scratched right down the armor. So, and again, I got amped up. I'm behind this machine gun, and I wasn't literally hearing it like the Billy Idol from before, but I just had Motorhead. I just had Motorhead in my head and Lemmy screaming, "Shoot 'em down, shoot 'em down." There was a song they did. They covered Twisted Sister, and it's called "Shoot 'em Down." And I just remember, "Shoot 'em down, shoot 'em down, shoot 'em down to the ground." And I just kept hearing that. And then at this time, I was seeing these people. And whenever I seen people moving, I could see them moving between the culottes, the houses, or moving a little in the tree line. And then I just laid the hammer down because I had an optic. I can't remember if it was 4 power. It was pretty significant optic on that machine gun. And whenever I seen people, man, I just fucking laid it down and dropped their ass. And we call it a double tap. As soon as they hit the ground, I'd just rattle off a few more rounds to ensure that they were dead. And then I fired the machine gun. It started jamming. And Doc Lindley was in this vehicle. He was feeding the rounds to me. Like he would have a can opened up, and he was feeding me the rounds. All right. And I was just letting it go. And at some point, the people in our vehicle dismounted. Doc Lindley. So I remember as I was firing that machine gun, Frankie popped out the hatch to see what was going on, and I swung that thing by him and just fired off a volley right by his fucking head. I almost got him, man. I mean, I fired that thing, right by his fucking head, man. And then I'm like, "I'm sorry, dude." And he's like, "All right." He goes, "It's all good. Just do your thing, baby." And I remember kind of feeling bad about it because before the deployment, he wore little hearing aids. He had from the Iraq deployment, so he was already hard of hearing, man. He had little hearing aids, and I remember I fired it by him. And so then him and Doc and Manny Fresh was the commander, the incompetent platoon sergeant was sitting shotgun commander in that vehicle, and they all dismounted. According to Doc, I didn't see this, Frankie maybe shot a couple guys as he dismounted the vehicle. Now, those Afghans that were with us, you know what they did, man? They jumped out of their vehicles and they hid inside a ditch. They weren't firing their weapons at all. They weren't firing their weapons. They were cowards, man. And it was just fucking dead weight to us. And then at some point you're wondering, are they going to start firing at us? Can we trust these guys? But they literally, now I didn't see this according to Doc. I didn't know it when I did this, but Doc said some of those dudes just pissing their pants, just trying to bury themselves into the dirt. They just hid in a ditch. And then old Stu from another vehicle comes walking back there. And he grabbed a saw, like there was a saw sitting in the cab of one of the squad automatic weapon. The gunner was, he grabbed his saw and he walked over there and he just fired that thing over their heads. Like, get the fuck up and fire, you assholes. He fired the gun. He let off just volleys of rounds over their heads. Like, you don't get in this fight, I'm going to fucking kill you. You know, and then they finally, because their hand was forced, they started trying to shoot back. And then we got a couple of their vehicles between us that are keeping us stretched out. And so, and I was firing that machine gun. Ross did a great job. He was the driver, and he carried an M14 rifle, had a powerful scope on the M14. Don't remember how magnified, but it's powerful. So he hung himself outside the driver's door, and he started scanning, and he was just telling me where to shoot. He would look through that scope, shoot it the 7 o'clock, Ronnie B, turn it around this way, watch out for Brandon and Blackie ahead of us, and I was just firing where he was telling me. And at one point, the gun started jamming, the barrel overheated, and I had to clear, just frantically. I mean, because the bullets were pinging into the vehicle. I got to get this gun up, just frantically. I don't even remember this, but Doc evidently before he dismounted, he handed me like a Gerber, and he said when I gave it back to him, the blade was bent, trying to clear this jam, and he says that he held on to that Gerber. He still has it, the one that old Ronnie B bent. And so I got the machine gun. Old Shane popped up, threw some lubrication in there, and then I was back at it. And so then I looked ahead, and I could see Brandon and Blackie were like kind of in front of us to the side. And Blackie was the gunner, lobbing Mark 19s into you could just see the rounds exploding into the damn houses. You hear the launch, doop, 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 pause, boom, 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 boom. And those mud houses, man, are like impenetrable, man. I mean, even those grenades could... Really?
Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, like old Stu kind of joked. He was like, it says something about 1,000-year-old mud hut infrastructure, because the day after the battle, Stu did they walked through there, and he said it's almost like we could have been slinging rocks to a slingshot at them. That's how they were hard as a rock, man.
Wow.
And so, and then Brandon, he was the driver, and this was I always say this, the bravest guy. Everybody was brave, but this particularly, these rounds were pinging and hitting vehicles, and he got up out of his driver's seat, stood on top of the roof of the MRAP beside the gunner, and he had grabbed every weapon available, and he grabbed a 203 and started launching grenades out there. And then he put that down when he went through rounds, and he grabbed Blackie the gunner's saw, and he started firing the saw at him. And then he would go through those and put it down, reload the Mark 19, shit exploding around him. I don't know how he didn't get hit at that time. I mean, and he was just standing there. He wasn't taking any cover, standing on his 2 feet straight up.
Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, I mean, just firing these fucking weapons and shit around him. I mean, and at this point, Stu gets the medic, Manny Fresh, and they need to go up there to see what happened to that vehicle. Manny Fresh is trying to keep them back, like, we need to get fire superiority before we go. And Stu's like, man, you ain't getting fucking fire superiority. We were surrounded on 3 sides. We were outnumbered and surrounded on 3 sides. And they were up in the hill. They had the high ground, surrounded on 3 sides, shooting down at us. They were firing the Dishka, which is their version of a 50 cal, small arms, other machine guns, and mortars. And these mortars were airburst. They were trying to get the gunner. They would explode before they hit the ground. And they were trying to knock out the gunner. And so I ended up firing all 1,500 rounds through this machine gun. We kept 1,500, every vehicle kept 1,500 rounds, and I fired every one of them until I got to a point where I'm up in I had an M4, and so I'm up in the turret with my M4 with 120 some odd rounds, done fired through a couple magazines. And if I run out, if this thing goes any longer, because this one lasted somewhere around an hour, and if it went any longer, I don't know what I'm going to fucking do. I'm going to find somebody else's weapon. And finally, we did gain fire superiority, and whoever was left of them retreated. And then they sent in, finally, these fixed wing air support flew in, started swooping in. And really, that's what ran them off. Cause
was that the A-10?
I'm not sure because I'm just a dumb grunt, but
Was it?
It
Was it that kind of thing?
It was just a fixed wing, loud, because it was hard for me to really, because I was just occupied, man. But it was just fixed wing aircraft flying like fucking Top Gun all over the place. Even if they don't, basically that's enough to scare the enemy off. They see that shit, and they're going to peace out. And so they were wanting to drop a bomb on them, but we were too danger close.
Yeah.
The enemy was that close to us. If they would have dropped a bomb, it would have killed us all. And then at some point, the thing swooped in. Oh, Stu talks about it. Thing comes swooping in so low, and just brrr, you just hear the backblast of it. I mean, it flew real low. And they was going to drop something, but the enemy was just too danger close to us. And so finally, we were able to get ourselves sorted, and we get the vehicle that was hit running, and start. And at this point, I heard Manny Fresh say over the radio in his Venezuelan accent, "These guys are KIA." And then I knew somebody's killed. I didn't know who at that point. So we got a KIA. We got several people wounded. And we were able to drive out of that area to a safer place to evacuate the wounded. And I set up in the turret, and that's when I remember, I asked Ross, once we were sitting still in a perimeter, the medevac's coming, I asked Ross, I said, "Who's the KIA?" And he just, in a choked up voice, he said, "Julian." And like I always say, man, it sounds cliche, but Julian really was one of the good guys. He wasn't a party guy. He was married. He had a young daughter. He didn't party like the rest of us. He was a real Christian, spiritual guy, just clean, Christian, spiritual, from West Virginia. I think he was around 25 years old, and he was married. And what's sad about this, we was there at that point around 8 straight months, and he was scheduled for R&R. He had the second to the last R&R. I had the very last R&R. So Julian, he was going on R&R, man. And sadly, that R&R bird left the morning after the firefight. Like the very next morning after that firefight, a helicopter come in Fob Boris to pick up guys that were going on R&R. And I know Manny Fresh was one of them. And Julian was supposed to be on that bird, but he didn't make it. And instead, he's flown home in a flag-draped coffin. And the reason he scheduled his R&R for November, it was his daughter's first birthday. So he was coming home to see his daughter for her first birthday. That's why it was scheduled, his daughter Maya. And yeah, man, and that was really heavy. One of the good guys, man. Everybody loved him, but yeah, his daughter's first birthday, and they had him out on that mission. And so I've seen him getting carried on a stretcher. They had a poncho covering his body. I seen Lieutenant Troutman walking towards the bird with a giant bandage on his. Doc Lindley put a huge bandage on his shoulder. And I see all the wounded guys filing to the bird to get medevaced off. And so then we drive back to Fob Boris. Now, it's one of those things, a lot of times, like after a firefight when no U.S. guys were killed, you might be back at the cans kind of laughing like, "Oh, man, did you see that? Did you see this or that? I shot this dude," whatever, talk like just kind of laughing. None of your guys got hurt. Like, holy shit, this or that, And so we got back. It really was somber. We all were just dirty, beaten up. I remember Rusty and I and a few of us entered the chow hall. There was nothing better to do. We went in the chow hall, just grabbed something to eat, I guess. And I remember Marty was Julian's best friend. I remember seeing him, and I just gave him a hug, said, "I'm sorry," and I didn't know what to say, man.
Yeah.
Just kind of gave him a hug and said, "I'm sorry, man." That was his best friend. And I remember Rusty and I are sitting there in the chow hall, and we're looking at this picture of fucking Hamid, Karzai, the Afghan president, Hamid Karzai. And I just remember saying, "Man, I'm tired of looking at that motherfucker." And Rusty went up to it, and he turned it where it was facing the wall. And so then I remember the next evening, me and old Joey C and some of us, are D-Ron Wimes, kind of smoking a cig, reminiscing about Julian. And all of a sudden I hear old Rusty, it's dark, and he goes, "Hey, Bruce, come here, man." And I walk over to his can, and he's got that picture of Karzai from the chow hall. And so we took it, propped it up against the Hesco wall, and I just remember I took a big-ass fucking boulder, lifted over my head, just tossed it down on it, and just shattered the fucking thing. And Rusty grabbed some rocks and threw it at it, and then we reached in there and grabbed the picture and tore it all up. And we just left it there for the local national trash man to get it the next day. And we had a memorial service for him on the fob. Brigade commander, the colonel, shows up. That was the first time, I'd ever seen him. And it's just a memorial service for us. And man, it was just tough, man. See a young guy. And I kind of felt, I'm like, man, I'm the oldest guy here. I wish it was me, I've lived a few more years, that kind of survivor's guilt. But being that it was a married man going to see his daughter's first birthday, it tore a lot of people up, man. I remember old Stu, Stu, and he even admits this, he wasn't really that close with Julian, but it just hit him like bricks because Stu had kids. He was a family man. And I remember Stu never played video games or nothing. He was a fitness freak, always working out. We all worked out. And old Stu, he just, I remember for about 2 weeks, we had once we got to the fob, we had like a little shitty TV and a PlayStation. And I didn't play, my video game days were over. But for 2 weeks, I remember old Stu just sat in front of that damn TV and played Tiger Woods golf with this quiet, wasn't the same old Stu. Literally for like 2 weeks, he just sat and played Tiger Woods golf. And I'll never forget one day after about 2 weeks, he just wakes up and he goes, he mixes him some a protein shake, and he goes, "Daddy's gonna go to the gym." And then it was like, then he was back working out again. But and so since that happened, we don't have 3 or 4 months. So I had the last R&R. And so Sergeant Stan pulls me to the side and he goes, "Hey, Bruce, I'm going to keep you inside the wire. You deserve to go on leave." And at this point, to be honest with you, I was really burnt out. That amped up feeling from firing 1,500 rounds or then the one after the IED, man, that feeling was over. I was physically beaten down, mentally beaten down. All this stuff happening for piss tests and trophies and deserters and chauffeuring people to R&R. I had to get home, man. I had to get back to Atlanta for those 2 weeks, man. And I would have been remiss. I told him, I said, "Sergeant Stan, if you need me, I'm here." And he goes, "I know, man, but I'm going to keep you in the wire until you go on leave." And so at that point, I didn't go on for the next 3 weeks. I'd been there 9 months, and I had the December leave. And so at this point, this is when there's kind of a revenge mission coming up. So I'm in the wire, and maybe it could have been a week, maybe 2. At some point after Julian was killed, Fob Boris started taking rockets again. And at this point, the squad leaders they were salty. They were going to stand up. Now, I don't know. I've since heard some behind the scenes. And so the captain spins up the squad leaders, and they're going to send us out there to send them out there to do the same fucking thing when Julian got killed. The captain's going to send us out there or them drive straight out to Mangrate the same exact way, same pattern.
Makes no sense.
And that's when Sergeant Stan, Sergeant Hicks, Sergeant Donald, they said absolutely not. They put their foot down. They said, "We are not going to fucking do this. We're not going to do it this way this time. We refuse." All right? And that's a gutsy thing to do. So the captain's like, "You really going to do this?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, you got 10 minutes. Go away, and you come back 10 minutes later with a plan." And so the squad leaders got together, and they made a good tactical plan. And they're like, "Okay, sir, you're going to get us air. We want Apaches. We want." He goes, "Okay, I'll get you some Apaches. And, maybe some fixed wing if we need it. And we're not going to just drive out there, okay?" And so I didn't go on this mission because this is my, but I'm going to go off second-hand accounts that I was told from Stan and Hicks, their versions of what went on. And this was the showdown right here, baby. So 2nd Platoon was already out there. They were on one side of a mountain. 3rd Platoon, our guys, they drive back out there, and they're on the other side of a mountain, all right? And they're on a couple different mountains, and in the middle is the enemy. And they're watching these guys. They had campfires set. It was cold as fuck. They had campfires set up in the woods. Now, the reason they didn't smoke them then is they had their weapons hidden. And like I'm sure you're getting from this interview is we never fired the first shot.
Right.
We were always playing defense. They held the cards. They were the dealers. Anytime we fired a weapon was after we done got shot at.
Right.
So they had their weapons hidden. And then it was so cold, a couple dudes from 2nd Platoon got hypothermia. So they had to come in there and scoop them out with a jungle penetrator.
Wow.
And so what ended up happening was 2nd Platoon's lieutenant, which is a good stand-up, hard-ass guy. He's a good, I think some people thought from this I may have been talking bad about him. He was a great guy, and he was looking after his men. I mentioned in there he got fired. He did get fired, but he got fired because he was looking out for his guys. So he calls up Captain Mack, rolls out there. Captain Mack was sitting in Stan's vehicle, okay, when they drove out there. Everybody's going, right? And so that 2nd Platoon's lieutenant radios Captain Mack to try to let him know, like, "Look, man, we need to get back to the trucks and warm up because right now we're almost combat inefficient. I've got 2 guys who have hypothermia that need to get out of here immediately." And the captain pushed him real hard. "No, you stay on that mountain." He pushed him hard. "No, stay on the fucking mountain." He goes, "Man, we're going to have more guys with hypothermia, And they bickered back and forth until the captain fired him over the radio.
Wow.
He fired that lieutenant over the radio. And I think they went, I'm not 100% sure, but I think they did go back to the vehicles to warm up some. Maybe, and then they probably came back. And then they medevaced those 2 guys with hypothermia. So then Hickson's sitting up on there. He's watching the enemy. And then I guess for some reason, one of those assholes pulled out an RPG and fired it at one of the Apaches. And at that point, game on. And that's when fucking Hickson was like, "Fuck this. It's time to end these dudes." And then the captain, everybody like, "Yeah, let's end it." So once that RPG went off, the Apaches swooped in. They had fixed wings. Now, like I said, Hicks understands this terminology. I don't know shit about aircraft, man. I wrote that it was a 500-pound bomb that went off. That was my perspective. No, that like what I learned later, Hickson said they dropped 15,000-pound daisy cutters on these motherfuckers. I mean, they dropped several
Wow.
15,000-pound bombs. Apaches launched fucking missiles into it, and they just fucking blew those guys really back into the fucking Stone Age, man. Smoked. And so what happened? So after this happened, Captain Mack decided he wanted to let the mountain cool. And early in the morning, somewhere before daylight, maybe 5 a.m., 3rd Platoon's going to walk up there and do a BDA of the mountain. A good BDA.
Yeah.
So the mountain cools. And one thing about the Taliban, I want to say, they were very proficient in scooping off. You hardly ever seen their dead bodies.
Right.
Except maybe the situation we talked about earlier. They were masterful in getting their guys out. They were masterful at being able to drag out their dead bodies before we got to them. because we would always walk out to where shit was dumped, but they would get their guys. But this time, they smoked estimated between 30 to 50 guys. There's a video, there's like a drone feed video of this. Somebody has it out there. You see them running, boom. And so 3rd Platoon walks up on the mountain, and as Sergeant Hickson describes it, he said it looked like Hamburger Hill up there, man. There was dead bodies and fucking pieces and parts everywhere. And one time they come across this body. Sergeant Hickson sees this thing. It's got fucking holes in it big enough to put your fist through.
Wow.
And some dude was mangled up and tossed in a tree. And then he looked at him, and he was like, wow, that's that shady motherfucker I seen in like a couple weeks ago earlier. We're walking through, we're like in this restaurant and patrolling through there, and Sergeant Hickson, he just knew these were shady. These are some shady fucking guys. He tried to talk the officer into letting us, take these guys prisoner and interrogate them, and they're like, no, they refused. Oh, well, that shady motherfucker was mangled and tossed in a tree. And there was fucking crispy critters everywhere, according to them. Drag marks into Pakistan, And so then one dude, they found a live one, and they thought he might have a grenade. And this is Sergeant Stanley's point of view. They seen this guy, he had his back to him, and Sergeant Stanley and Sergeant Frankie, they drew their weapons and, screamed for the guy to drop the grenade that they thought he had. And the guy, he just wouldn't do shit. And so Frankie, he played junior college baseball. He had a good arm on him. Tall, lanky, like 6'3", rocket arm motherfucker. So he picks up a rock and just chucks it at the guy and misses. And then he was pissed because he missed. He picks up a bigger rock and just chuck it and just bam, hit that dude in the back of the head and knocked him out. That guy came crashing down to the ground, and the Afghans went up and searched him. And, each time the Afghans searched one of these bodies, they would hoodwink the opium. So every dead body, they'd hoodwink the opium. And so they searched him, got his opium. He was still alive, and they dragged him off prisoner. I heard that he had hypothermia. I think he had hypothermia and ended up dying on the ride back when they finally drove back to Boris. I don't know that they were giving any special effort to fucking save this guy. So,
was it the base and everybody? Was there a good attitude? It kind of felt like they justified Julian?
Yeah, we'll get to it. So then everything.
Yep.
Okay, so then another one jumps out from a tree and fires an RPG point blank at Sergeant Stan. Him and Frankie were standing there. Fires an RPG, and it just flew right over Sergeant Stan's head and barely missed him. I mean, Sergeant Stan, he could feel the whoosh from the fucking flying rocket. And him and Frankie just opened up and smoked that fucker into the ground, emptied their magazines into him. And then there was a guy behind him that was just incapacitated from the backblast of an RPG. The asshole was standing behind somebody firing at something that has a backblast. And so old Sergeant Rubio, who would always say, I'd always hear him, I just want to, these missions are lame, man. I just want to shoot a motherfucker in the face. He always said, this is fucking lame. I just want to shoot these fucks in their face. So old Sergeant Rubio struts by, sees that dude laying down half alive, and he just fires a few into his face to finish. He just smiles and fires a few into his face to finish him off. And then they ordered them. They said, we got to get these guys off the mountain, the dead bodies. So Sergeant Stan, he walks up to the guy him and Frankie smoked, and he just slides his cheap watch off his wrist and puts it in his pocket. he hoodwinked his watch and put it in his pocket. And Sergeant Hickson was like, from his point of view, he's like, no, I'm not touching these dudes. He goes, we're dirty Christians. They're Muslims. We can't touch them. And he's like, get the Afghans to do it. So they got the ANA, Afghan National Army guys up there, and made them carry these fucking guys off the mountain. And they just carried those bodies, put them in the back, stacked them in the back of pickup trucks, and drove them off.
Wow.
And so I remember they get back to the base, man, everybody had been awake, they'd been awake over 24 hours. And at this point, everybody was just pumped, man. And I just remember I'd already heard about Sergeant Stan and Frankie, and I walked up and like, tell me about that hod y'all smoked. And they just kind of smiled, described it modestly, and then old Hicks walked into his room and just blasted some fucking loud and fast heavy metal. You could just hear it out there. And he just walks out and he's like, about 50 of those motherfuckers met their goddamn Allah last night. And everybody was like, just fuck yeah, screaming, no, like being in a concert, man. And so that's when they finally got theirs. We finally got ours. The people who killed Julian, the people who've been picking us apart this whole fucking year, we finally smoked their ass. And then I went on R&R.
Was that weird going on R&R?
Oh, for sure. For sure, man.
Did it feel like you were in no man's land, kind of?
Right. But I did, I lived it up for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
man. I mean, I lived those 2 weeks on the end of a lightning bolt, man. I mean, because I had to come back, and
How much time left did you have?
About 5 more weeks. And at this point, I didn't know if I was going to live through this, man.
Yeah.
I kind of had to think about it. How many times my 7th day there, I almost got smoked by the mortar round when we were running to the MWR. I was in the vehicle rollover, that could have easily killed me if it would have just moved, if it would have went upside down completely, I'd have been dead. Hit the IED, had the bullets pinging all around on that firefight when Julian got killed. I felt like, man, I don't know how many of these I got.
Yeah,
and
you'd used up some of your 9 lives.
Yeah,
like
man, and half of my platoon was wounded at this point, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was really, I was dancing with death, man. And but yeah, I went on R&R. I'm not going to go into the details, but people will they'll be able to. It was just a wild, rowdy time. And then I will say, so I get back. We got about 5 weeks left. And at this point, I really am thinking, man, dude, we're just going to wind this down. We only got 5 weeks left, man. We're just going to wind this down, chill, and get out of here. Let somebody else take this over.
Yeah.
But then I get back, and I remember see old Joey C. and Brandon. We all give some bro hugs. Hey, it's good to see y'all. Now, oddly, I wanted to be back.
Yeah.
I wanted to finish with these guys. Now, let me say this. When I was on R&R, I don't remember the exact date. It was in December, and I'm on R&R, and I'm watching the world news, and that's when the CIA camp at Camp Chapman, where several CIA officers got killed and wounded. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was the deadliest day in the CIA in over 25 years. Mm. And then I thought, man, that's what I'm going back to. I had to be back in a couple days. So I get back, a few bro hugs, and we're sitting in there in Joey's room, and I'm like, man, I'm ready to just ride these few weeks out and just chill and get the hell out of here. And then there's kind of an eerie silence, and old Brandon's like, well, I hate to break it to you, Ronnie Beebe, and he points at a paper calendar that had shit penciled in, and he goes, we had a mission every other day for 3 weeks, and then we're going to spend our last 2 weeks at the Bergdahl compound. Geez. So we, at this point, and they had spotters watching us every time. And at this point, every time we stepped off the base, they would fire mortars. We're getting sketchy, man. I remember old D-Rum firing his machine gun into a ground off at some dude coming at us on a motorcycle. He just wasn't. At this point, nobody was playing no more. Fuck this. And so we do the 3 weeks of missions every other day. We had a new platoon sergeant and a new lieutenant. Nothing was wrong with them. It was a good. The platoon sergeant was a complete 180 from Manny Fresh, good guy, and the lieutenant was a good guy. But I feel like I don't know exactly. It seemed like he may have been in more of a headquarters type capacity. So this was this was his last few weeks to get some or whatever.
Right.
So I remember we're at Bergdahl, and We only had 3 days left in the deployment.
It's still not built up.
No.
It's just
nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Brittle-ass buildings. At this time, I was at the bottom of the hill. We'd push out patrols into the Margall Bazaar. And like I tell people, man, it looked like a Stone Age version of Dodge City. It was so spooky, man. Just old. It looked like an Old West town, but mud. Just kind of 2 rows of it in the middle of nowhere, man. And we would patrol through that bazaar. And then we had 3 days left, and we're walking towards Volkswagen. We're walking from the little thing to Volkswagen. And at this point, too, one thing, Sergeant Stan was a stop loss, so he wasn't even supposed to be there anyway. He got stop lossed and forced on that deployment, and so he wasn't there then. They threw the stop loss guys a bone and let them leave like 3 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
And I remember Stan just gathering us before he left and said, guys, don't get complacent. Don't get complacent. A lot of guys get killed in their last couple weeks. And I remember my dad, one thing he did say about Vietnam is he said, I probably didn't sleep my last 2 weeks there. I barely slept because the VC were sneaking up on our guys at night while they were on guard duty and killing them, slitting throats. And he was like, I didn't sleep them last 2 weeks, man, because people were getting killed. And I thought about that. So we had 3 whole days left, and we're walking towards Volkswagen. And at this point, I was a team leader. And as a team leader, you wear a radio. And I can hear the interpreter calling in there and, telling us that the spotter, they're listening to the radio traffic. And, he's telling us what the spotters are saying. The spotters are watching us. And so I know they're watching us. And thank God, at this point, we had the Afghans in front of us. Okay?
The A&A.
Yeah. Because thank God they weren't behind us. Just to back up, just real quick, on one particular mission, we had a perimeter set up with the Afghan guys dispersed in with us, and we started taking fire. Now, if you're taking fire from like the 6 o'clock, let's say the 6 o'clock you're taking fire, guys at the 12 o'clock they can't fire back. Only the guys facing the fire at 6 o'clock fire back, or else you'll shoot each other in a crossfire. So one time in a perimeter with these guys, we're taking fire from the 6 o'clock. This fucking Afghan on the 12 o'clock started firing back, and he shot one of the other Afghans. We had to medevac that Afghan out. It could have been one of us. And that's why we just didn't like working with these incompetent motherfuckers, man. And so the Afghans were in front of us. For 3 days left, hey, we're letting y'all lead this fucking patrol. And we're walking towards this village on the other side of Route Volkswagen, and just all of a sudden, rat-a-tat-tat-tat, machine gun starts firing off. And I remember we all hit the dirt. And this was a bear. This was in the flat bear. There was nothing to take cover behind. And we all just hit the dirt. And Joey C, we were in our wedge formation, spaced out. No one grenade or rocket can't kill us all. So you're pretty well spaced out. And Joey C and Brandon said rounds skipped in the dirt right between us all. And so we're down, and we got this new lieutenant, good guy, but and all of a sudden I hear on my radio, we're gonna push into the village, and I'm like, fuck, dude, man, 3 days, really? But at this point, even though I'm feeling this way, so I run over and kneel beside Joey and Brandon, and I'm like, hey guys, we're gonna push into the village, and then Joey's like, what? And in a leadership capacity, I'm like, hey man, let's just do it, get it over with. So luckily we did, and then a pickup truck comes speeding right past us, and I'm like, I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, soon as after we're about to pick up and move into the village, this Ford Ranger just hauls ass right by us back to Margall. And what had happened, their first sergeant, which is their head honcho, like their highest ranking guy, accidentally shot himself in the foot trying to return fire.
Oh, jeez.
Shot himself in the foot trying to return fire. That's how incompetent these guys were. And so luckily we pushed into the village. Every second felt like a fucking day, man. And thank God nothing happened. Nothing happened. And I will just to button this up. I remember we get back to we're back at Margall, and the guys who were relieving us, it was a unit from the 101st. They were called Rakkasan. They had like a Japanese character symbol on their helmet.
Are these guys helicoptered in as well?
Well, no, we were at that Margall rotation. So second platoon or dog, one of them drove them out. They drove a platoon of those out to us.
Okay.
And and they're in this nice, clean, fresh new gear, Rakkasans, and it reminded me of those guys that I seen when we first got there. That looked like the living dead, wobbling onto the aircraft. By this point, it was us. I mean, we were out at that Margall compound. We were all scraggly. None of us had shaved in days. Just scraggly, unkept beards springing out, emaciated looking, skinny, hobbling around without. And so that was us to them. And I could feel them looking at us, and we're trying to explain like, yep, guys, this is yours now. This is what you're taking over. And I'll never forget, we had like a little makeshift tactical operations center. We had a little makeshift in one of those little brittle buildings. And I just remember happened to be on radio guard, and the two full bird colonels come flying in there. It was our colonel, full bird colonel, our colonel, and the Rakkasan colonel were both. And our colonel was showing their colonel what we were handing over. And I just never forget. I'm just sitting there. Even though, we had to shave real quick. We had all fucking dry shaved because these fucking colonels. So the colonels, they walk in the room, I stand up, and I'm just listening, and they go back and forth. And I just remember their colonel, he just had a shitty look. He had a pissed off shitty look. And our colonel was explaining rotations to this place. And that colonel, he just looked at him and said, in my experience, a place like this ain't sustainable for 6 months. He was being handed a turd sandwich, man. And that's what it was. A couple days later, the helicopters flew in. They actually got us a day early. Like, hey, guys, get your shit. Oh, we're getting out of here a day early. We hadn't even showed them dudes all the ropes yet. We had this, I don't want to go too in. We had this new Crow system type vehicle that's perfect for millennials grew up playing video games. You sat in the back inside the MRAP and you operated the whatever machine, any machine gun, 50 cal 240, Mark 19 could be used with it. And you operated it through a joystick looking at a screen. And, they actually flew some civilian contractors to give us a class on how to operate these things. They outfitted 2 of our vehicles with it. And so when the helicopters flew in to fucking get us out a day early, I felt bad for those guys. We ain't even taught them how to operate the Crow, the acronym. We ain't even taught them how to operate the Crow system yet, man. And we're like, oh, shit, bye, hey, guys, bye. Now, I think we did leave maybe a guy or two back kind of like they did us that stayed an extra few days to show them the ropes. And I remember we were so happy. We were literally leaving from Margall. And I just remember we got our gear, and we just rushed on those. And I remember, so we staged outside the COP, and I still had this fucking anxiety of, man, one more rocket attack, one more ambush. I just had that in my mind until I see those helicopters start coming towards us. And they landed, and I remember we all just rushed on the birds screaming. Man, I swear, I've been to a million heavy metal concerts, man, and we just rushed on there. We were all screaming like we were in a mosh pit. Everybody just screaming, and that thing, when it lifted off in the air, all that fucking anxiety just released at that time. And I'm like, the war's over for me, baby. I'm done with this shit. No more bullshit games for me no more. And so I thought. And then we got back to Alaska, and then that's when the next war started. So another thing that makes me sore about this leadership is, I would say, about a third, there was just a lot of problems. You can imagine, I'd say about a third of my company, half of us wounded, about a third of my company that was in Afghanistan on that deployment eventually got kicked out of the Army. It didn't take a year. Within a year, a couple of dudes had already committed suicide. And what makes me bitter is everything we did for Uncle Sam. And as soon as we got back to Alaska, the Iraq War drew down. The Army didn't need numbers no more. Stop loss, that was all over. And as soon as we got back, if some guy got one DUI or got in trouble, any bullshit little misdemeanor offense, they just kicked him out of the Army. And like what we used to call in the Marines a big chicken dinner, bad conduct discharge. And they were just handing out big chicken dinners left and right. One offense, bye-bye. And then you're thrown out to the civilian world with a shitty discharge, unable to use some of your VA benefits like the GI Bill and stuff. And that just gets at me. And so, yeah, there were guys who actually, before the deployment, when they needed the asses, there were guys getting DUIs, failing drug tests. We had a guy, Blackie, showed up 19 years. He stole a club bouncer's bar and was joyriding around Anchorage and got pulled over by the police. And they called the unit. Manny Fresh went to pick him up from jail, And all that went under the table because they needed everybody for the war. Once we come back and they didn't need us no more, any little bit of trouble, people got kicked out. And, man.
Well, it's putting it all out there and having them treat you that way.
And then dealing with the VA and just getting treated worse. Man. But, yeah, a lot of these guys, and there were guys who got in trouble before the deployment that they let them do the full 12 months. And then they kicked them out after the deployment for what they did before they sent them.
It's insane. I feel like you put it all out there, though. I mean, it's clear you had that itch going before you went to go get in the dirt, and you did. And you laid it all out there.
Right, and everybody did. I understand if somebody done something really heinous.
Yeah.
But they were kicking people out for first offense misdemeanor type stuff, man. And then a dozen years after the deployment, all of a sudden, 6 guys that I served with are dead before they turn 30 as a result of suicide or recklessness.
Yeah.
Guys serving in prison. Our medic committed 2 armed robberies, a sergeant in the company committed 2 armed robberies. The second, and while he was on bail, he robbed a bank. 25-year prison sentence, served 10 years. We had several guys that were homeless for lengthy periods of time afterwards. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse ran rampant. I've answered the phone. One of my good friends from the platoon called me. The first thing he said is, I answered the call on a Saturday night. And he's like, man, if you wouldn't answer it, I was going to blow my brains out. And I talked him down. Part of talking him down was, hey, man, your kids. Think about your kids, bro. And then, he come out of it.
Yeah.
And then it led to where I became suicidal. And then I tried to, I didn't have the balls to kill myself, but I tried to get myself dead, and I'll just leave it at that. But
then you wrote a book.
Yes, sir.
And that's how I came to meet you. I actually listened to this on Audible, The Grunts of Wrath. What year did you write this?
It took me, it was something I did as a side project because it helped me heal. So, but it officially came out in print in 2022. The audiobook came out in 2023. Right now, the print version's out of print, and I'm working on getting a second edition done, and the audiobook will be out there for 10 years.
I got to tell you, it's an impressive book. I'm a big fan of nonfiction, and it's not only is it interesting, but it's well written. Like,
Well, thank you, sir.
it's well written, and there's just a lot going on in this. It tackles a lot of things about war and going to war and coming back from war.
Right. And I just want to say that I know anybody's going to watch this. There's a lot of chaos, man. There's a lot of chaos in this interview. And I organize it in this book. One reason, I wrote this book for a few reasons. One is it helped me out of a suicidal state. Two, I felt like people needed to hear what was really going on with these guys. And three, I don't mean to be a hater. There is a lot of bullshit books out there about the Afghan-Iraq experience. A lot of them, and we're finding out today, a lot of these books are just absolute bullshit, made-up, phony stories. Some of these books are ghostwritten. It's like the government, Uncle Sam pluck people out, write the story for them. Hey, here's your book. We're going to train you how to go on a book tour. Just get out there and sell the war effort. So it's propaganda to sell a war effort, to make the war more popular, and I'm not going to name names or titles, but just a lot of these books are bullshit. So I wanted to do this to be real. And it's like the first line on the blurb on the back, combat diaries from elite operators and commanding officers dominate the space. But what happens when regulars face the fire? A lot of these, if people would think, you read these books, it's almost like the special operators were the only ones that went to war.
Right.
And it was the grunt that paid the biggest cost. We didn't have the specialized missions, all the equipment and fucking dogs, and we didn't have all the, it wasn't knocking this damn door and get this target. It was the piss tests and all this we went through. I don't want to go through that. But so what I want to do to kind of button a lot of this up, in a lot of these books written from a commanding officer, they're not in, well, even if they were in the shit, like besides your lieutenant is out there with you. And to an extent, the captain, if an officer comes around, you're going to button up, sir, you're going to button up. Where this is, I'm telling you what we just said in regular conversations, things like that. A lot of books, it's like the title of the book is a title about themselves with a cool picture of them on the front.
Right.
To where the Grunts of Wrath, it's a title about the group with a picture of the faceless men patrolling down the road. And, and I took this picture, by the way. There is a cool picture of me, but it's on the back.
Yeah, I got to see the front.
It's just, it's a title about the group, and then it's a picture of me on the back. And, and I wrote this book so people could get the real. And it's almost like a lot of these ghost-written books, it's like it gives society the impression that the veteran comes home, grows out a beard, throws on a grunt-style shirt, and wraps himself in a flag, and everybody says, thank you for your service. That's not what happens. These guys come back, they have injuries and issues, me included, and you just get thrown into this bottomless pit where the VA is denying every claim. I go in detail in that, and I won't hear. The VA's diagnose, people are diagnosing you with shit while other people are denying that it ever happened to you. And, it's just a lot of people just came back very miserable, and like drug abuse, alcohol abuse, suicide, homelessness, and crime became a lot of the norm for the guys that I knew that came back. Now there are success stories. There are people that are a lot of guys now who have made it through that, have reinvented themselves and are doing great things, starting and owning businesses, operating businesses, making lucrative six-figure salaries. working in high-level government jobs. There's some people doing some great things, but I just wanted to be real, man. You know, it wasn't beards, grunt style shirts, and wrapped up in a flag and thank you for your service. It was a lot of being drugged through the mud.
Okay, I want to bring up something. You talk about it in the book. It's about your dad, when they tried to get your dad to re-enlist.
Oh, yeah.
I want to hear that story, and I want to hear if that's how you feel.
Okay, so my dad, he was a very funny, and he passed away of pulmonary fibrosis, by the way, in 2013, most likely due to Agent Orange, right? And he was a very funny guy with a real good sense of humor. And most of his stories about Vietnam were funny stories. And he never wore thank me for my service gear. If most people seen him, they wouldn't even know he served. He was very salty about how he was treated after Vietnam. You know, now you see the Vietnam vet, you know, they might have their Vietnam vet. They're finally getting their due, and they deserve every bit of it.
Yep.
All this hell that I'm talking about now, my dad and his generation went through 10 times worse. My dad didn't see a dime from the VA for over 40 years, and he was just, you know, had all kinds of problems. I'll just put it that way. But he was a good, positive, very funny person. So what happened was, and he was drafted. He didn't ask for this. But like any red-blooded young American at that time, you know, my country calls, I'm going to do it. So my dad did his tour in Vietnam, seen what he saw. And so the first sergeant called him into his office or in his tent. He got called into the first sergeant's tent, and he was going to offer him a squad leader position. He was asking him if he wanted to re-enlist. And my dad always said he would be like my age now in his late 40s, and he's like, dang, man, if I would have stayed in, I'd be retired by now. I wouldn't have to be doing shit. But so anyway, he said if it weren't for Vietnam, he may have stayed in. But first sergeant calls him in his tent, offers him a squad leader's position, and tries to get him to re-enlist. But if you re-enlist, you have to immediately stay in Vietnam for a second tour. And my dad's like, you want me to re-enlist and stay in Vietnam? And that's what you'd be, a squad leader. And my dad was like, no, first sergeant, I don't think so. And the first sergeant pressed him, and he's like, son, what'd you do before you got drafted? And my dad described his blue-collar vocation. And the first sergeant mocked it and made fun of him. And he was like, is that what you want to do for the rest of your life? And my dad, cool as ice, clapped back. First sergeant, I'd rather take the back seat out of my car and haul cow shit for a living rather than stay in this motherfucker and get shot. And he was like, get out of here, man. But one thing my dad always said is, you couldn't give me $1 million to do it again, but you couldn't give me $1 million not to have done it. And that's how I feel right now. Through all the good and bad and the ups and downs, I'm glad I did it, because Ronnie B just wasn't made to be in the suburban bubble playing house during those years. And that's basically it, sir.
Thanks, Ronnie.